Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us on Upfront in the Prophetic. Boy, we've got a broadcast for you. I know there's so many of you that are confused and really don't understand what in the world is going on. Is this a movie? Are we in deep caca? I'll say it. Are they going to win? This and that. It's all nonsense. Guys, we're going to bring the truth to you. And I have to say this one scripture to you. It's Galatians 6:7, and it says, "Do not be deceived. God is not mocked, for whatsoever a man soweth, he shall reap." Oh boy, it is reaping time. Come on now. I'm excited about what God is doing. And you know this. He's called and appointed and anointed people for such a time as this. And this has been planned. This is God's plan. But He uses the prophetic, He uses great minds, and He speaks into them the plan that needs to be done. And I tell you, it starts from our founding fathers. I mean, this is amazing. So before I get our guest on, because I'm not going to tell you who he is yet. Oh, well, he is. He. Okay. So I'm going to play something for you, and then we're going to tap into this a little bit deeper.
It's my plan to dismantle the deep state and reclaim our democracy from Washington corruption once and for all, and corruption it is. First, I will immediately reissue my 2020 executive order restoring the president's authority to remove rogue bureaucrats, and I will wield that power very aggressively. Second, we will clean out all of the corrupt actors in our national security and intelligence apparatus, and there are plenty of them. The departments and agencies that have been weaponized will be completely overhauled so that faceless bureaucrats will never again be able to target and persecute conservatives, Christians, or the left's political enemies, which they're doing now at a level that nobody can believe even possible. Third, we will totally reform FISA courts, which are so corrupt that the judges seemingly do not care when they are lied to in warrant applications. So many judges have seen so many applications that they know were wrong, or at least they must have known. They do nothing about it. They're lied to. Fourth, to expose the hoaxes and abuses of power that have been tearing our country apart, we will establish a Truth and Reconciliation Commission to declassify and publish all documents on deep state spying, censorship, and corruption. And there are plenty of them. Fifth, we will launch a major crackdown on government leakers who collude with the fake news to deliberately weave false narratives and to subvert our government and our democracy. When possible, we will press criminal charges. Sixth, we will make every inspector general's office independent and physically separated from the departments they oversee, so they do not become the protectors of the deep state. Seventh, I will ask Congress to establish an independent auditing system to continually monitor our intelligence agencies to ensure they are not spying on our citizens or running disinformation campaigns against the American people, or that they are not spying on someone's campaign like they spied on my campaign. Eighth, we will continue the effort launched by the Trump administration to move parts of the sprawling federal bureaucracy to new locations outside the Washington swamp. Just as I moved the Bureau of Land Management to Colorado, as many as 100,000 government positions could be moved out, I mean immediately, of Washington to places filled with patriots who love America, and they really do love America. Ninth, I will work to ban federal bureaucrats from taking jobs at the companies they deal with, that they regulate. So they deal with these companies and they regulate these companies, and then they want to take jobs from these companies. It doesn't work that way. Such a public display cannot go on. It is taking place all the time, like with Big Pharma. Finally, I will push a constitutional amendment to impose term limits on members of Congress. This is how I will shatter the deep state and restore government that is controlled by the people and for the people. Thank you very much.
Okay, guys. So with that video, we have with us Rattletrap 1776, Derek Johnson. Woohoo! Hey, Derek, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing good. I'm just kind of
Chilling?
just relaxing as much as I can. I've been writing part two of the book, so I've kind of taken a break today a little bit. So
This
uh,
is so powerful, guys. Oh my gosh. Got to get the book. I've learned so much. I mean, and like I said prior, I mean, my husband was in the military, military wife. Our son is in the military. I didn't know half of this. This book, your book has blown my mind, my brother. It's awesome. I mean, and you truly have been called for such a time as this. Okay, so we just saw President Trump declaring and decreeing into the atmosphere what he's about to do, and I'm fired up. But this is nothing new, is it? I mean, this has been planned for how many years?
I mean, it's been I know people can kind of get kind of befuddled, I guess would be the right word when they think about, this has been a plan for many, many years, but everything has to be done lawfully, ethically, morally. And then you have to have everything aligned perfectly. Um, and I mean, some people say 20, 30, 40, 50 years, but I mean, I'd still just say, look, I mean, the line was drawn in the sand on November the 8th, 2016. That was your definitive view from an outsider looking in. When you heard this man that's an outsider come in and he gets to have free range of verbiage and say what he wants, call people names, call people nicknames,
Mhm.
say what he wants to say. Um, and, it's stuff that no one had ever seen before, obviously. So it should show people there's your line there. But for guys like me, I saw, what I saw um, well in 2015 and 2016, and then the verbiage he used on the campaign trail in 2016 was stuff that my grandfather and great uncles had talked about. The 200 general comment was what they call a conspiracy theory. The other side called it a conspiracy theory for years because generals, military are separate from federal. I mean, our whole military is separate from the government, and people need to realize that. And through the years, there's always been a battle with generals and presidents and generals with Congress. Um, then some generals through the years have been, you know, had some kickbacks, meaning like they stood down and got paid off. I mean, we have stuff in history that shows that. But enough generals finally said enough was enough, and we have all the full comms, as we call it, which would be audio and disclosure of that taking place. And it's a special operation more than anything, which requires a lot of secretive military, which are all lawful, ladies and gentlemen, because they're in our military and have been in military for years. They call them clandestine operations, which has multiple kinds of warfare with it, irregular warfare, unconventional warfare. Those consist of like subterranean, asymmetrical, guerrilla warfare. Um, so, you'll hear people out there talk about stuff like symbolism will be their downfall and all
Mhm.
these other things. Well, you can take the enemy's plan and flip it. I mean, so people need to realize that, they hear guerrilla warfare and some of that, and they think that that's all bad people. No, it depends on who's in charge and what the operations look like and consist of. When you take the enemy's plan from them and you flip it back on them, that's just called strategy. And that's what's taking place. And that's what President Trump was asked to be the face of,
Mhm.
because someone still had to be that face in a presidential looking seat, um, and to lead this rally. That way we could flip our foundation. And that's what everybody's witnessing and has witnessed. The Declaration of Independence has come full swing, full surface. We have offset and off thrown this radical tyranny of what they call a government. That's what this operation's all been about. And that's why I always have this handy now. That dash right there, ladies and gentlemen, means continuous 45, 46, and 47. All right. So that came out in April 2023. So that's why that's important.
That is very important because a lot of people really, when they saw that, they're like, what does that actually mean? So it means that it's been, like you said, continuous. So he has been the commander in chief. I mean, this is like so amazing. And before I ask you this one question, I want to say happy Valentine's Day. Happy
Oh
Veterans.
yeah.
Happy Veterans
That's our only Valentine's Day in the military. It's Veterans Day. But I'll never forget in service, they on Veterans Day they would they worked you harder on Veterans Day because they're like, you're not a veteran yet. And so you're going to earn this. So one day when you're sitting on Veterans Day, you can look back and say, yeah, that was our quote unquote Valentine's Day.
Uh-oh. No,
That's
really?
an actual joke. No, it's an actual joke in the military. It's like.
No. So with
Well, with some of it may not be universal, but I remember us joking about that being our Valentine's Day. So
oh my gosh, so that wasn't a slip on my part. So that I guess I had to really say that.
well, not well, it may not be universal yet, but with me and my buddies, that's what we call it. That's our Valentine's Day for veterans.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh. Okay, so we just, I mean, witnessed a red wave throughout, but you already knew that. I mean, this has been planned so well. And so, I mean, all this stuff that's going on, like with Kerry Lake and Arizona and everything, that's y'all know that, right? So, um,
Mhm.
but a lot of people don't realize that and they're in fear.
Well, yeah, and I understand. I mean, the first between the dash years, so this isn't over yet.
Mhm.
But because people have validity of that number now happening, check mark, that's validation. Because not, it's hard to talk about this without saying but I did. I had these things called the documents from 2017 to 2021 that I put out in 2021. They're on my Google Drive. It's time stamped. And I gave it to friends and family at first because I'm like, this is what you're watching. This is long before I went viral and then anybody knew about me. My family, I'm like, that's when obviously I had friends call me crazy and, oh, if you're such a big hot shot military, oh, what are you doing talking to me? And I'm like, I never said any of those things. You just said that. All I said is that you're watching a military occupation, military operation, continuity of government. President Trump never left. It's a military government. So I dealt with all that way back when, just like people still deal with that with their friends and family. But I'm saying that meaning I have timestamp proof that I've shown people what's going on before the visual of that came out. President Trump put this out April 2023. And February, he had still just 45 on there. So this came that dash. So he was claiming, ladies and gentlemen, 45-47 a year and 7 months before November the 5th, right? Now, liberals and the fascist, communist, socialist, Marxists, they will say, oh, he's just a pompous, you know what,
Right.
egotistical. Well, they're going to say that. However, when you're a military personnel and veteran and you know your military laws and orders separate from federal, but also how they pair, and I already have the blueprint of that taking place before President Trump gave validity and a validation, then it precedes that, meaning like I have full proof. All right. So no, a lot of people don't know what's going on. And when I was, first flew out the gate, it's because I was dealing with a lot of, Republican conservatives who are acting like rhinos, and I do. I always seem like I'm talking with my chest, but I'm just like I'm trying to get people's attention the right way because this stuff is so rapid fire that you have to get people on board fast and say, all right, turn off all that and get this in your life. This is what's going on. All right. And then you got to deal with the people going, well, why does it matter so much to you? And I'm like, because I'm getting served beyond my service. That's like the ultimate call to service is
Mhm.
when you get out and you can't be in the military anymore. then you get to serve beyond your service. That's like the ultimate call because you're fulfilling it not only in service, but now as a civilian out of service, you get to fulfill that. And it's going to benefit all of us when everybody finally sees taxes unveiled, get those out of the way. President Trump's already said there's no such thing as a tip tax, ladies and gentlemen. There's no such thing as an overtime tax. That's called income tax. All right. When
Right.
that's all
Come on now.
taken away, right? Which has all been fraudulent all these years anyway, but we can't worry about what happened in the past so much as, hey, it's overtaken. We got a special operation going on, and we're gonna pave the way for our future. But we're gonna unveil stuff of the past that needs to be seen. That way people can appreciate what we're doing moving forward. But there's most definitely a special operation going on. So I'm kicking into another mode now. Now that people see the validity of 47, I'm going to be like more cool, calm, collective in another manner, not so much, you know. But I felt like I needed to be that, but
You
during
did.
that time period because so many people are falling prey to a lot of people who are trying to take advantage of people, and there's a lot of incompetent people who want to do something good, and I get that. But until you learn what's actually in place, because there is most definitely a blueprint of a military occupation and a military operation, you need to know the people who know what's going on to a T first, and get your foundation built. It's no different than being a Christian or whatever it is people do in your life. But like if you're a Christian, then your foundation has to be the Bible because God gave us a roadmap. Like you can't claim to be a Christian without reading Christ's word and God's word. Like it's just don't work that way.
Right.
Because what ends up happening, people say the Bible don't say that. The ones who are trying to be a Christian without the Bible, they'll say, well, the Bible don't say that. And I'm like, yeah, it does. It says it right here.
Right.
And what's amazing about the Bible is the Bible beats all of us up in another kind of manner. It ain't designed to do that, but meaning like there's a scripture for everything. And we're wrong all through it, and we're also can be saved all through it. Because God is so much bigger than us, and we're never going to outthink and outsmart God because his plan was designed that way. But it was also designed for finding salvation and forgiveness and going, okay, I repent, right? And then not looking at your brother and say, until you, but even then you shouldn't judge someone else per se, but still it says until you have cleaned out the sty in your eye, hey, you don't need to be looking anywhere else, right? Go look in the mirror. But if you're going to say something to your neighbor, go look in your mirror first, right? Don't walk out to your neighbor first and then go back in and check the mirror and go, oh, no, you need to go into the mirror first. But it's the same thing where I'm not knocking other podcasters for wanting to have a heart and a role, but when you're misleading people and there's a clear blueprint, then there's also a scripture for that. 2 Peter chapter 2, 21-22, right? Where it talks about once someone has heard, it's better for them not to hear the command and walk away not knowing than it is to hear and then to deny that. Because it talks about a dog will return to its own vomit, and a pig who is washed, a sow, will return back to the mud. You can wash a pig all you want, turn the pig loose, it's going right back to the mud. Well, we don't need this during that time period. We need people to realize that if you love this man, which you should, if you love this man, there's a plan in place. That's your validity of that plan. And, there's certain people who know more than others. It don't mean we're better than you. It just means some people do know more because it's a specialty. I'm not a doctor. You wouldn't want me working on you. I'm not a dentist. You wouldn't want me drilling on you. Like I can take the drill. I wouldn't know how to numb you up. I've seen, oh yeah, you just put it right here and then you wouldn't want me doing it though. Like I'm going to hit a nerve really quick. All right. And then you're going to cuss me and maybe punch me. Right. There's certain things I don't specialize in, but I don't go into a dentist's office and tell the dentist how to do his job. Right. Because he has years or he or she has years studying. Right. So it's the same thing. And a lot of men and women out there, I mean, we have people who have committed suicide over this stuff. So that's where it gets serious is because people have contacted my management and said that they were going to commit suicide until they heard what was going on in the bigger picture. Well,
Wow.
that's someone's life out there who was spared, and they were going to do it. Most of them were going to do it, they claim, because of financial, crisis and things of that nature. And they didn't see a path forward, and they never thought their life was going to get better.
Wow.
So that's when it becomes, we go from laughing to serious matter to go, hey, this right here is definitely a special operation to liberate the world. It wasn't partisan. It's not a Republican conservative or a guy hoity-toity or a bunch of generals going, we're going to flex this time. No, this is enough. We've had a snowball headed for hell all these years with our government, and
Mm-hmm.
they just kept digging holes. And there was going to be a catastrophic event had someone didn't step in and, no, hey, we can fix this. It's a man-made system. We can fix this, but it's going to be a few bumps and bruises. It's not going to be perfect right out the gate, but all they really had to do was take a few old tactics from World War II days and then also enforce the laws as they're prescribed on paper.
Mm.
And then once you use the enemy's plan, see all these people, all these Congresses passed these laws through these years, and they read perfect on paper. So all you got to do is take them and go, well, you passed this back in 1973, you passed this back in 1990, whatever year it was, and go, well, now we're going to do it as prescribed by paper because you haven't been doing that. And that's why, if people step back, you have not seen one liberal, even though I know it's all an operation, every bit of it. But for the people who don't know that yet, you haven't seen one liberal Democrat say to President Trump, especially during his first 4 visual years, you never saw not one single one, not one single Democrat liberal said, you can't do that. No, they started making up stuff. Oh, he was on the phone call and he did it. So, but that was all genius why they did it that way, because they're also going to exonerate past presidents. The whole Ukraine phone call,
Mm.
Watergate, and Nixon. It was the same kind of setup. There's executive orders that show what the 3 letter agencies are not supposed to do, and there's an executive order of what they're supposed to do. The executive order by Gerald Ford that shows all the 3 letter agencies and what they're not supposed to do by law, you have witnessed them do to President Trump. Now it's all an operation, but for the people that don't know that, like the raid on Mar-a-Lago by the FBI, that's in that executive order. There are to be no unconsidered searches. All right, physical surveillance. President Trump said in 2017 they tapped Trump Tower. Tapped. Same thing they did to Richard Nixon. They tapped his phone call. They listened. All these things they have replayed back on the deep state, but they're enforcing the law and the new party's in charge, meaning there's a new power in charge. So it's like I've told people, it's all that matters is who's in command and then seeing the visualizations of that. And when people go and resort to, well, I don't see anything, it's because you don't know what you're looking at. And that's okay. You got to know the laws and the orders and what they mean first, and then you'll be able to see the visuals of those, especially when someone like me says, well, that right there is this law and order. That right there is this law and order. So until you know those laws and orders that have been invoked by this man in this operation, you might not ever see it. And you're missing the greatest, most brilliant operation on the man to intercept all the enemy's plans, flip it back on them, special operations. And then also the special operation flip the narrative on the low level, like
Mhm.
the average everyday folks like you and I, but it flipped the narrative on the liberals, fascists, communists, socialists, Marxists, because all these years, that entity of people, they were pretty correct all the way up until the early 2000s when they were saying the Bushes were corrupt and the Bushes started wars for foreign oil. Well, then they made Kamala praise and say that she had 200 former Bush aides, Romney aides, McCain, and
Oh.
then Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney. All of a sudden, that liberal base started telling Republicans, hey, you can't see, you guys are ignorant, stupid, and all these other things because you can't see that all these former Bush aides and McCain and Romney are supporting Kamala and they're ditching Trump. No, you're not listening to the rhetoric, because it was your base who said that those group of people started wars for foreign oil, not because they were really threats to our nation and our Constitution and our way of life. You don't see what's on page 11 of the Unconventional Warfare Pocket Guide, Special Operations Command, that was put out in 2016. That Special Operations Command booklet was not just another publication. We have a lot of them in the military. We do. We have a lot that generals write and colonels write. This was the Special Operations Command as a whole putting out their new publication for unconventional warfare. On page 11, there's a pyramid. It looks like a diagram, but it's a pyramid, and every line has a clause on it. Every single line of that pyramid you've watched and witnessed the last 9.5 years. It's all there. It's just a special operation, and it flips that narrative, because some people, you have children, I don't, but some people know this if you have multiple children. Some children, I was a good child. My mom and dad can tell you, when they told me to do something, I listened, I did it. Some children, I got a cousin, I won't say their name, but you could put me and them side by side. I won't even tell if it's a guy or a girl. That way they don't know who I'm talking about, but they'll know anyway. But standing there, you could say, do not touch this stove, it's hot. I will stand there and listen to you complete your sentence and the command of what you're saying. But my relative was one of those that while you're saying it, they're already touching the stove. Oh, it's hot, it's hot. And I'm over there laughing, going, well, if you just listen, if you just sit there and have a little patience and listen, you'd have known not to touch that. Right? Well, some people that are that relative of mine, sometimes they need to be by the collar and ripped up and said, listen to me, chill out, just relax, just have a little patience this time and listen to me. That is what's going on when people say, well, why did it look this way the last 4 years? It's because you never knew what it's supposed to look like beforehand anyway.
Come on.
You know, you don't know what our government's supposed to look like, what our military is supposed to look like, because you've never seen a government that works for all people. You've seen the Congress's checks and balances where they created their own system and they never let it tip too far. They always kept their balance. But look at all the people still in poverty. Look at all the homeless on the streets. Look at the crazy taxes we have all over. We have a tax for a tax for a tax, right? Ladies and gentlemen, taxes were established because incompetent people could create jobs. So they created a tax, right? But then what did they do? The tax might have been a good tax. There might be one good tax out there if we all agreed, okay, this tax is going to go to these highway funds out here, right? Or this highway, this certain toll road over here, it's going to go to that. Okay, we may not all agree on one thing like that, but then what ended up happening? Those incompetent people started going in that tax for their bonus and their salary, going, well, I need an extra bonus now. And it didn't go towards what it's supposed to go. That's what we've witnessed for many, many years. And so everybody had to see a man who was an outsider, not a career politician. Amen. And everything the man did. Now, I know it's all an operation. But for the people who don't know that yet, every single thing the man did was the very thing that all of the career politicians said could never be done. Remember when they made Obama just in 2015? He was on all these talk shows, late night shows, and he said, what does Donald Trump have? A magic wand? Does he have a magic wand where he could just bring those manufacturing jobs back? And I guess he does have a magic wand. He's got a magic wand called the United States Military Special Operations. All right. So everything that everybody witnessed with Obama and all that, that was still part of the operations and stuff, because they intercepted a lot of this. That's special operations to get people's attention, because people, unfortunately, in our nation love drama. And so it was a perfect playbook in the special operations. When you read that pyramid, you know, certain riots of the past were not real riots. That was to get people's attention. All right. Because now you don't see those people rioting.
No.
A lot of this stuff are special operations tactics to get people's attention. And, you know, checkmate for the United States military special operations, checkmate. And that's why, you know, the guys that forwarded my book, former deputy commander of Delta Force, special operations, retired lieutenant colonel, Australian Forces, special operations. That's why I'm on with Michael Jaco all the time, former Navy SEAL Team 6 chief, right? That's special operations, special forces, all these different. That's why a lot of the special forces back and support me, because all I do is highlight what those guys did on a regular basis. And it's not unconstitutional. It's not unlawful. It's all ethical and moral based on military principles, the law of war, and the law of peace, and certain things that they're doing. But it had to be done this way. It had to be drug out this way, where people will appreciate every single notch when you do become awake. Where when we move forward, we don't get right back into this in 5 or 10, 15, 20 years.
Right.
Hopefully not even 50 or 100,
Right.
or however long we live. I get to live my life, but, it should be that mentality that I'm sure your parents did, I know mine did, and my grandfathers did it. It's called the pass it forward,
That's right.
right? And, like I remember my grandpa. I remember this like it was yesterday. I know exactly where I was. And he said, "Come over here, son. You need to watch me do this because there's going to be a day grandpa's not going to be here and you need to know how to do this." And it was something working on a tractor. It was like a part or something like that. It's like putting a certain kind of bolt on, and I'll never forget that. And, at that age, you're like 12, 13, 14, 15, all those critical years. And
Mm.
I'm like, Papa, don't say that. Don't say that. Don't say. He said, "Son, it's reality. It's life." And
Yeah.
he said, "It's going to come one day." And he told me, "You're going to drive by that cemetery." There was a big oak tree and I wish it would have lived, but it didn't. But there was an oak tree in the cemetery. And he said, "You see that oak tree? I'm going to be out there one day under that oak tree." And his plot was right under that oak. He said, "I'm going to be fertilizing that oak tree one day." And I said, "Papa, don't talk like that. Don't
Oh,
talk like that." And he
right.
goes, "Son, 5 years after I die, you'll drive right by that cemetery and you won't even look out there."
Mm.
And I was, you get guilty of that. And I love my grandfather more than anything in the world. I love both of them. I love my grandparents more than. But I remember the moment it hit me when I drove by the cemetery and it hit me. I drove by it and I'm like, I just drove by the cemetery and I did not look out there at that oak tree. And
Oh.
it hit me. And I
Mm.
love him more than anything in the world. But it hit me. And so that's where we are right now in
Mm.
trying to get the younger generations and everybody to appreciate the foundation of America. You're only in this nation because of what our founders established and the sacrifices that they did. And all of those founders didn't live to be old men. They were either brutally murdered or they were also killed in battle. So a lot of people don't realize that. And they're not just some old, folk legend, and they're not just some old name. These men and women had lives and they said enough's enough back then. And now we're going back through that as well. But there's a way to prevent that. It's
Mm.
to educate people on the foundation. And once people understand that, and then we put discipline back into our lives, and discipline, my dad never beat me. He never abused me, but he disciplined me, right? And he had to use his voice every now and then. And he was already had a deep voice, but he never beat me or abused me, but he still disciplined me. I turned out perfectly okay. And I know other friends and family members who are perfectly, but integrity, right? That's what brings integrity. That's what brings character. And then that's what we put in these systems that we have all around, from whatever company you're in all the way up to the top. That's what instills that. And when someone slips up, depends on how bad it was, right? What kind of punishment they need. Or maybe just need a reprimand or whatever it could be, but maybe not need a firing. But that's why our systems have looked so whack and crazy, because no one even knows what integrity looks like anymore. No one knows what truth is. All those have been diluted. So we have to reinstill that again. And that's what this whole operation was to do. And President Trump said it. And I know people don't like the word, and I won't use the word on here, but he said everything has to go to
Yeah.
crap.
Mm-hmm.
Everything has to go to crap sometimes before people can realize, how do we make crap better?
Right.
right?
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
it was the only way that he could grab everyone's attention. And in war, there's casualty, and we've, lost some people. Um, but the truth will set you free, and that's where we're going to, the truth, and we'll have that true freedom. That's powerful. Have you had your coffee yet? Well, join the cause. Drink more coffee. Head on over to patriotsariscoffee.com. I love what
and
you're
the more
saying.
people who know that, and the more people who know that, the less casualties we can prevent in the
Yes.
future. Like the casualties come big, and I always take my hat off, but the casualties come a lot of times because of negligence.
Hmm.
If you look at the leading cause of death in the military, outside of suicide, which is already horrendous and tragic, it's negligence where people fall asleep on duty, they're not paying attention to detail. Well, apply that to the civilian world and go, well, you know, when people are whining and complaining about a system, all I do is say, name the three branches of government. Well,
Hmm.
they can't even just name them. Just say federal, so it's executive, legislative, and judicial. Just say the three federal agencies, right?
Right.
Well, not necessarily agencies, but three branches, but still just the three core agencies of our nation that run our nation. Just say them. And people can't do that.
Right.
So where do we? It's like I tell people, like I want to respect your opinion, but when you can't even name the three branches of government, the three entities that run our nation,
Right.
then we're in trouble. And it should show people where we got when people can't do that. So when people learn those and
Hmm.
then learn all the notches from the local level, state, the federal, learn the court systems,
Hmm.
when people learn that again and put that as an emphasis, we will prevent casualties in the future because people will be all empowered and aware. That right there. You turn right to it.
Yeah, you better believe it. And a lot of people, unfortunately, the children today, the education system is horrific.
Ooh,
And I praise God that President Trump is giving parents the opportunity to send children where they want to send them. And boy, you talk about draining the swamp. The swamp is already drained, isn't it?
oh yeah, and then people just are seeing the drip drip drop. Once again, you can't appreciate it until you grasp what's going on. So they did it like a slow drip drip drop because
Mhm.
there are
So,
multiple things going on everywhere.
right,
Right there, President Trump had 11 executive orders with 11 national emergencies alone, which means, ladies and gentlemen, that means legislation and law, and then a national emergency. Those are two entities right there alone, two separate, but they conjoin and pair. So that means heavy emphasis. We're going to fulfill these things. You better do this, or
right,
right. Well, I mean, you were mentioning earlier when you talk about all these different people who stepped down in 2022 did not seek reelection. That was all part of the operation. All right. Then you had over 2,500 CEOs step down in 2021 alone, Fortune
mhm,
500. That was Executive Order 13959 with a national emergency because it was freezing assets of sometimes individuals, but also organizations who were funding the Chinese, the People's Republic of China, which are also the Chinese Communist military. All right. So a lot of this stuff that people heard, they just didn't realize what they were seeing because it was so rapid fire everywhere.
right,
Then
right.
Israel is everything happening in Israel and Iran are all in military publications 5 years ago. President Trump was the one who put the emphasis on the military, putting in publications and strategic plans for subterranean warfare. We
Mm,
had tunnel rats all the way back to the 70s, but it was never an emphasis with an actual strategic plan to
mm,
have a subterranean warfare
wow,
dialect and also, dialogue and publication to go after that and fight that war, which includes all trafficking because that's what tunnels and
right, wow,
sewers do.
right.
So there's that. The Ukrainian thing goes back to
Mhm.
what Obama and Biden were doing in 2014 and then the 2018 when the treaty was broken between Russia and Ukraine and then Helsinki, Finland. President Trump in 2018 met with Putin. He handed the soccer ball. There were
Right.
all kinds of visuals along the way. Well, those are all laws and orders, things have been put in place, ladies and gentlemen. And then it was a heavy, heavy emphasis. President Trump was not going to start a foreign war. So he got all these other nations to go, all right, this is what's going to take place. You're going to do this. We're going to make sure of this, and this, but you're going to do it. And you're going to fight for it. President Trump said, we're not sending our guys
Come on.
anymore to places when other nations don't want to fight themselves.
Right.
And the Afghanis were the hardest to train because a lot of them didn't want to fight themselves. They didn't want to fight. They wanted liberty and freedom. They want the milk and honey, but they don't want to pay the price to get the milk and honey. See, and so many people need to hear that. So why do we send our men and women all over to fight for nations who don't want to fight themselves, right? So you want freedom, but you don't want to pay for it.
Right.
Why do we have to pay for it, right? Now, most of us veterans will, we will do it. I mean, that is a thing that's what's amazing about Americans is that we will actually still do it if we were called to do it, but we shouldn't have to. And it's that, once again, that mindset. Again, why don't these other nations? And so that's what President Trump had to put a heavy emphasis on, and that's what everybody's been witnessing. But everything's been done lawfully, and it had to be done at paces where people can appreciate what's going on.
So that was
and
the
that's what I want people to know.
That was a capitulation tour, right? So when he went to each nation,
Yeah, 2017 to 2020 went on capitulations. Well, that term, ladies and gentlemen, it sounds old fogey, right? There's certain things but it sounds old fogey because you just never heard it before.
right?
It's a new verbiage. It's a new terminology you never heard of in your life because it's okay. But it's because most people don't know military like the Law of War Manual. All right, the Law of War Manual is 1,254 pages, and it's a tough read. It is a tough read. And the other thing that makes it tough is under all of the phrases and the meat of the book, it's got a lot of references as well. And it's all, I mean, we're talking about paragraphs of references with key comments in there. But capitulations are in chapter 12 of the Law of War Manual. We did this in World War II. They were called government in exile, which is good government. Then you had these things called shadow government. Sometimes a shadow government's not necessarily a bad thing. It just depends on how they're using it. All right, those are in. Guess what those are in, ladies and gentlemen? The 2016 Special Operations Command Unconventional Warfare that I'm talking about with the page 11, the diagrams. That same publication talks about government in exile, shadow government. All right. President Trump's government in exile. Well, in World War II, the Philippines is the one I use the most. The Philippines had two presidents. The Filipino people, Japanese, Japan, they put in a president for the Philippines when the real Filipino president went to D.C. with Roosevelt. Roosevelt had full command of the Filipino military through President Quezon. The president that Japan installed for the Philippines, all he had control of was civilian affairs. Now, Biden is not that second president, not in that manner. They use that as like a shell. It's a visual to show it's been done before in history, but this time the war is different and they set it up completely different. But it's all been done before. So when you want a validity of that, when people are going, oh my God, I've never heard this talk before in my life. What in the world? All right, here's you some validation. President Trump in 2022 and 2023 on Piers Morgan especially, he said, remember Angela Merkel? And she was the chancellor of Germany, ladies and gentlemen, at the time. He said, remember Angela? He said this at Mar-a-Lago in a speech. In a crowd, I could tell President Trump was aggravated because a lot of people in the crowd, even at his own place, were all sipping champagne and they were drinking and having them a merry old time. And he wants people to be engaged at all times. Everyone. He was down. He said, remember Angela Merkel? Remember Angela? And then he goes, nobody's remembering her right now. And then he paused. I could tell he was trying to get people's engagement as well. Then he goes, I gave her the white flag of surrender.
Yes.
Well, if you walked up on the street, right, and you said, hey, can you tell me what the white flag of surrender is? Most people are going to be like, oh, are you talking about like a Nintendo game? Like Mario or something?
Right, right, right.
Like the little white flag. A lot of people might know what a white flag. Oh, that means you're giving up. Like I give up.
Mhm,
Well, President Trump said I gave her the white flag of surrender, which
mhm.
means did she follow through with a command? Well, white flag of surrender, ladies and gentlemen, is the white flag of truce. Guess what chapter that's in? Chapter 12 of the Law of War Manual. Guess
Wow.
what chapter capitulations are in? Chapter 12 of the Law of War Manual.
Oh,
All
isn't it?
right. So there's your validity. And there's been
Mhm,
multiple validity. And I'm skipping ahead, but because we're here in the Law of War Manual, just the last few days before November the 5th,
mhm.
before the election, November the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, President Trump was in Traverse City, Michigan, and Madison Square Gardens. He said this. He said, we are an occupied country,
Mhm.
but we will no longer be an occupied country soon. He didn't say on the 5th. And he also didn't say this, meaning this. He said, we're an occupied country. We will no longer be an occupied country soon. November the 5th, the Great Liberation starts. Now, he didn't say it that it ended on the 5th. He was
Right.
just saying we're, meaning that's, but it's validity, again, ladies and gentlemen, of that right there. And then also the Law of War Manual. If you go to chapter 11, the whole chapter 11 of the Law of War Manual is about the military occupation. Well, what are the odds? Now, this is when numbers matter. Now, some people will use numbers the wrong way. They'll ride down the road and look in the mailbox and try to put your mailbox to do with this operation. That's not how that works. All right. Now, all numbers are godly in another kind of manner, but all numbers can also have bad symbols with them as well. They have good and bad.
Right.
But this is an example of divinity of God, and God put this man where he is in this
Mhm.
operation where it is. This way, when he gives you a command, when President Trump was given that verbiage on those days and those days only, well, 11.3 of
Mhm.
the Law of War Manual is the end of the occupation.
That's
All right.
powerful. I remember that
That's powerful.
on the cue board that they
And
mentioned
so
point three.
that's right. Well, so he's over here telling you
Wow.
on November the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th,
Mm.
before what happened on the 5th, that we are an occupied country. We will no longer be an occupied country soon. The Great Liberation starts on November the 5th. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the chapter 11, once again, is military occupation. And guess what? Occupied territories. Occupied country, occupied territory. Same thing. All
Wow.
right. So it's all there. And it does. It seems right out the gate far-fetched for someone who's never heard it before. And it should feel that way in one way. However, when there's guys like me, especially on Veterans Day today, honoring all my brothers and sisters out there as well. It's ain't just saying this was more about my brothers and sisters, and that's the way it's supposed to be with veterans. It's always about your brother and sister, and then they'll be about you because it's reciprocal. Well, because of that reason, it's because it's military laws, military government. See, that's what's taking place. A military occupation is a military government. This Constitution has been suspended. All right. And then you have a continental government that has national essential functions, 8 of them. And when you read those national essential functions, they look real identical to a regular government. So that's why it's real keen and hair that you got to study these things to know what a military government is. Nothing scary, but military government, military occupation means martial law. President does not have to tell you we're in martial law. Why would he forecast you that we're in martial law? Why would he forecast to the enemies, hey, go run and hide, we're going into military government?
Right.
What did he tell you in 2016 on the campaign trail? He said it, never again will we voice to the public what's going on with our military, because if you find out, guess who else finds out? So you
Mhm.
have full validity from the get-go. All
Yeah.
right. And that's why he said we will hit our enemies when they least expect it.
Uh-huh.
You look at Afghanistan.
Yeah.
They ran that mouth and that Moab hit them and it wiped out that whole mountain. You didn't hear nobody talking anymore,
Right.
right? So there were certain things that he had to do in the early stages to go like Roosevelt. I speak softly and I carry a big stick. You want to pipe off at me? Well, you're going to find out what this stick's all about,
Right.
right? So everybody had to see this way.
Mm-hmm.
And I get on the surface when people don't know what's going on. I understand the questions. Well, why would it look this way? Why would gas and why would food? Your food and gas have always been fluctuated.
Right.
And it's teaching people that what happened in 1971, the Nixon shock, that's when Congress made the dollar as valuable as they wanted it to be or as invaluable. That's when they created their whole little checks and balances. So you've never had gas costs the way they should be, food costs the way they should. You've never had that, right? It may be more affordable to you in another kind of manner, but look at your bank accounts at the end of the year. Are you any better than where you've ever been? No, you're not. So, and you know, now we're not all supposed to be billionaires, but we're supposed to be happy and content with what we have, right?
You know, you just brought up something. I remember when President Trump said, "You all don't know, but you're all millionaires." Do you remember when he said that? So, what was he really talking about when
Well,
he said that?
because, you know, one, we put emphasis on material things, right? We base success off of houses, cars, trucks, properties, plural, the
Right.
plural of that,
Mm-hmm.
right? We also made things about sex. We sexualized the world, right?
Sure.
Where it's about, oh, you know, if your wife don't look a certain way to your buddies or your husband or whatever that is,
Mm-hmm.
we've also done that. So that's one entity of it. We've materialized everything. Then we idolize all the wrong people, right?
Right.
We put all these different people on the pedestal based off of those material things,
Mm-hmm.
right? But then also on the flip side, on the real side of things, when you look at those taxes, those constraints, those shackles that have been put on us people, then you turn and look at Congress and career politicians. Career politicians, ladies and gentlemen, $175,000 a year is what they make right now. The Congress. How are they career politicians?
Come on.
Some of them, once again, 30, 40 years at
Mm-hmm.
175,000. Of course, that's changed over the years, but still inflation. Let's just
Okay.
do it. Should have never had inflation in the first place, but let's just go ahead and
Right.
just say 175,000 a year. All right. Career politicians, how are they worth 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 million?
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So all of those what? All of those tips that they get on stock trades and all these other things that they've done. And hey, put your money here, do it here, do this. Or hey, there's a property coming up for sale over here. You go in there to, I mean, just think of all the stuff that they've done, all
Right.
right, that they got tips on.
Mm-hmm.
So President Trump just said the other day as well, he was alluding to all these different things. So he just said it. Matter of fact, I screenshot it. Matter of fact, it's just the ninth. Let me find that screenshot. I
Okay.
am very surprised that the Democrats who fought hard in a valiant fight in the 2020 presidential election, raising a record amount of money, didn't have lots of money left over. Now they are being squeezed by vendors and others. Whatever we can do to help them during this difficult period, I would strongly recommend we as a party, for the sake of desperately needed unity, do. We have a lot of money left over that in our biggest asset of the campaign was earned media, quote unquote. He put that in quotes. And that doesn't cost very much. Make America great again. Well, that is a jab to all the Democrats, man. So go back to that special operation. See, all what people had to see during this time period, he made all them spend all their money. See, it's already a special operation. There was no way out for them to get out. So he
Mm-hmm.
made them spend all their money to the people, right? He made them spend all their money to Ukraine, even though I know they didn't really do that. That's all that right there, ladies and gentlemen. It's just like this. It's like not a, I don't want to use the word facade, but it's all play money in another manner. It didn't really happen. But visually to you, the people that didn't know it at the time, it had to happen that way. But once you learn this is a special operation and it's lawful, it's nothing scary, and it's for humanity, it's for liberation of the world, not just a party. Like once you learn that, then you'll appreciate they made all these people spend their money. Money is only as valuable as we make it, right? And so I believe that there will be a retribution. President Trump said there's going to be a retribution. He said this over and over again. Now, will that make us all billionaires? I don't know. But I do know this. He did say with the Joe Rogan show, he said, Joe said, so are you saying that everybody should be I can't remember the words he used, but he said, so everybody should be basically wealthy in another kind of manner. Uh, and we're going to impose tariffs on everybody else, right? And what people need to understand about tariffs is this: tariffs only apply when a certain nation is trying to say, well, we're going to send you this and charge you this, right? Mm-hmm. But we want to break on this. No, you want to charge us this, it's going to be reciprocal, right? No, that's not an even trade. See, what people are the average person listens to Joe and Kamala, they're not listening. You got to go read what a tariff actually is and how President Trump applied it. He said, if China says 300% on this, well, then, hey, you're getting a 300% on this. It's going to be reciprocal. All right. Or if it's 200% or 100%, it doesn't matter what the percentage is. If someone says you're going to do this, okay, well, we're going to give you a 100% tariff. We're going to make it even. Right. So that's what people need to understand. Well, when you make every nation independent on their own, that's what they've done. You go read the Indo-Pacific Agreement 2019. And even though Pompeo was on the past, President Trump, he's not going to use them anymore. But still, everybody was using their entity, right? President Trump, while I'm on that, President Trump uses a lot of people. This whole special operation, ladies and gentlemen, was to use people who would have never done something and made them do it. And therefore, in the future, what happens? If they go against that fabric, then it makes them look like a what? A hypocrite. Right. A double standard. We've seen that in years past, but no one did what? No one held them accountable for it. That's right. Now that we have all the people involved, we have a lot more Americans involved now who are mad, angry, bitter, upset. Okay. Here's how we show you not to be mad, bitter, angry, upset because it's a special operation. However, take that same mentality and apply it to the future whenever the Constitution comes back and President Trump restores laws and orders back to our Constitution, not the military government. When that comes back in the future, God forbid this happens anytime soon, but like let's say that someone goes awry or someone in maybe your community out there, maybe your congressman or woman, local congressman, House representative, maybe they do something wrong. Now you'll know by validity also what you've seen in the past. Now you'll know, well, that wasn't this or that wasn't that, or I didn't vote for this or whatever it is, you'll be able to hold that accountable. Yeah. So like Joe the other day, they made Joe after the election, Joe Biden came out and said, ladies and gentlemen, our electoral college, it needs to be put to rest. Our electoral college is the best system we have. It needs to be put to rest about basically abolishing it. Well, if everybody would go back to Al Gore and George Bush, even though that was already read back then, but go back to the principle of it. Back then, Hillary, all of those groups were charging back then. We need to abolish the Electoral College. It's old fogey. It's an old system. It doesn't work anymore. We just need to go to popular vote, let popular. Why would Joe Biden, who was a part of that establishment, come out and say, that's the most random thing you could say, but it's not the most random thing you can say. It's all part of a strategic. You make all these people. Now, what's going to baffle people is there's a lot of Republicans who look pretty. Boy, they look pretty. They look like a pig with lipstick, and they said all the right things. They did all the right things, quote unquote, on TV. But what were they doing back here that where no one could see their personal lives? President Trump, when he said we have it all, we've caught them all, he meant everybody. He didn't mean all liberals. This was not a liberal Democrat clean out. This was a clean. So President Trump told everybody in 2020, it's an invisible enemy. You don't know who they are, ladies and gentlemen. That's what he was saying. You don't know who they are. We know who they are. He said it in the last few speeches before this election. He said the enemy is within. It's not overseas. It's right here. Now, they're already cleaned out, ladies and gentlemen, but it's getting people to recognize that. So when Pompeo was in this Indo-Pacific Agreement, Pompeo is not being used anymore. And you heard Dan Scavino Jr. saying, anybody who jumped ship with President Trump from 2021 to present day, we don't want any part of you. right?
Yeah.
Well, Dan Scavino is one of President Trump's right-hand guys. So when he says something, you can put
It's in
a
the
validity check on that, right?
right.
Boom. You can take that. Well, that Indo-Pacific agreement where Pompeo said this, every nation will be independent, sovereign on their own.
Yeah.
This is a resetting of saying, all right, right now in history, that's what the capitulation was. You're going to do this. Your nation's going to do this. You're going to do this. Your nation's going to do this until everything is cleaned out on every level of a massive reset. Then we can start talking about constitutional stuff again and international trade and things of that nature. So I think that the monetary system, once again, we're going to a gold-backed digital currency.
Mm-hmm.
Digital currency, ladies and gentlemen, you got to listen to the terminology. Not a central bank, not centralized, it's
Right.
decentralized. All
Mm-hmm.
right. So it will mean
That's
that
good.
you get to really do what you want with your money. Now, everything will still have a standard and a premise and a principle and rules and regulations of that. Lawful, things that are lawful. Like I tell people, I don't talk QFS and all that. There's a lot of frauds out there already doing that. That's fraudulent. Until this man and everything shows you how this stuff operates, you don't need to be doing anything right now. Now, there are some good gold vendors out there in silver that's already been in business. Gold and silver is not bad to buy, but I can't. I don't know the companies to tell you. I'm not that person. But anything else when it comes to the decentralization of all these other things, just chill out for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Let the people who are in charge of this. That's where it comes. See, you can trust these people when you know the plan.
Yes.
That's like I tell people when you know the plan, then you can put your trust into that. And I don't put anything over God and Christ, but I can tell you right now, this man right here in this military in this operation, you can trust it because they've done everything to the standard and T of our foundation, our Declaration of Independence, and our Constitution. And
Ooh.
it's a military operation. But the monetary thing, I don't know if we're all going to be millionaires necessarily, but what I think people are going to realize is this: when they take the income tax off, which was always fraudulent,
Oh yeah.
that's never been
Mm-hmm.
never been. But we will have, I think, what they call a flat tax. And
Right.
you heard
Across the
Herman
board.
Cain talk about that way back. President Trump liked Herman Cain.
Mm-hmm.
So, before he passed. So I believe there will be but it'll be smart and it'll be something we all agree on because we do have federal highways we all
Yeah.
enjoy. We ride interstates, right? They have to be fixed and repaired at times. We have bridges and things of that nature that we have to cross. Those have to have specialists who tell if they're, stable. Can we cross over this bridge anymore? Do we need to put a new bridge? There's things that we enjoy in life around our nation that have to be fixed and repaired that require money. Where does it come from? Right. So it's a monetary system.
Yeah.
Will everybody be rolling on the big wheel,
Right.
like chilling at the beach and the mountains? I don't
Right.
know, but once again, I think it's the emphasis of
Freedom.
what we put as, like the basis of quote unquote success.
Yes.
That's got to change,
Yeah.
right? Because that's what put a lot of these people in these places. That's why I know all the secrets of country music. I used to care what people thought of me years ago when I was on my climb trying to make it big and all this other stuff. It was all about making it big and everybody knowing my name and all this
Getting
and
on the
other. And
billboard.
then,
Woohoo!
yeah. And then you get on Billboard and you're like, that's what it was. It's that. I mean, I can ruin country music. Like my book is long, but I can ruin country music in 5 seconds, real easy. Now, what people still do though is they still go support the system that's corrupt,
Mm,
right? Country music fans are still doing it. I'm like, you're supporting the corrupt system though. If
right.
you'll boycott just for a moment in history, it'll flip the system. It's not going to hurt that artist for long. The ones that you like out there, not every artist is bad, but they're in a corrupt system that don't work for everybody. And it doesn't work based on talent. It doesn't work based off their own system because I've done everything by the system.
Right.
I'm talking about to the T and etiquette of it, and also etiquette to the people in the positions who are the record labels. And if it were about talent and etiquette, then I would have a record deal. I don't. So it's like getting people to realize that
Mm,
what we put as an emphasis in this nation needs a giant reset on every aspect. and then not idolizing certain things and putting people on certain pedestals based off material things.
Yeah.
Let's go back to like President Trump, the merit-based system. And then, okay, you can tell a great song versus a mediocre song, and you still get to decide that as a person and what fits your ears and what fits that. But a lot of people think like me versus Morgan Wallen. Let's just use a big name out there. Everybody loves Morgan Wallen. But when you say, well, hey, listen to Derek Johnson's music, oh, that's good. But what they'll do is they'll still share everything that Morgan Wallen does, but don't share my stuff. Well, that's showing people that no, you were told to like this guy in a system. When you were given this guy over here not in the system anymore, you're like, oh, well, but he's not in that. He don't have a record deal. No, you need to know how the record labels work. If it were about talent and measured on talent and also etiquette and protocol, then more guys like me, guys and gals, would have record deals and not them. I'm not knocking Morgan Wallen. I'm knocking the system based on the talent. That's the same thing we've had in politics. President Trump said, why do they keep hiring these people? Some of these people are in higher fired positions. Why do they keep hiring them? So it should show people the corruption was right in front of you. And, you know, it's great that people are aboard now and they're awake. But when people say, why did it have to look this way? Well, there you go. Where were you the last 10, 15, 20 years? Not knocking you. But if you're going to go with that rhetoric and that verbiage, then I'm going to go with that and turn on you and go, okay, well, where were you though? Because a lot of these people are in higher and firing positions. Guys like me, I know what I know because I've been knowing it a long time in my life. And I'm the one that's been yelling and screaming in good kind of ways to my friends and family through the years that, hey, you got to know this stuff too. We all have to like build strength in numbers and go into these congressmen and women all together, collectively go, you weren't hired for this. We didn't elect you to pass this bill. Why did you pass? That's why we have half the bills we have, half the laws we have, because of incompetent people at this level weren't called out by we the people who are actually the government.
And isn't that part of the Declaration of Independence where
yes,
you go in,
yeah,
right? When there's tyranny,
yes,
you take them out, right?
We're the government. We the people. That quote, the quote, we the people is so diluted and watered down, people don't know. We the people actually means we're the government. You see, our founders started a war for taxation without representation, right? And freedom of religion, but really heavily on taxation without representation, because they were like, why did we flee and get on these ships and come? And many of them died coming across, right? Sacrifice. So why did we come all over here to have the king across the pond rule us over here? That's the very reason we left, was to escape that tyranny, to escape that rule, to escape that crown. Well, so when you apply that, you know, and then you go to taxation, but now we have representation and we have the people who are supposed to be the same group of people of our foundation. Now we have that entity that says the words the Constitution. All right, well, tell me what the Constitution says. I'm okay. Look, just tell me. They can't do it. And then say, well, and like Abraham Lincoln, who's one of the greatest presidents of all time, Abraham Lincoln said it first, and he may not have been the first that said it, but he's quoted for it. He said the Declaration of Independence is more important than the Constitution. The Constitution would not have a living, fighting, breathing chance had the war never happened and the Declaration ever been put down. Now, the Constitution is important, but it's only important for us to know it, to keep our representatives in check, right? It's all it's for, is to keep representatives in check. I don't want to be a congressman or woman. I don't personally want to be a congressman, right? So, you know, but definitely not a woman. Oh, but I said that including the women. I know. But still, like if you're out there saying, if you're a woman and you're saying, I don't want to be a congresswoman, well, you know, your friend might want to be, well, we got to keep your friend in check because that's what the Constitution does. And so many people don't even realize that Constitution is not for us on a personal level. You know, it's for us to go, why'd you pass this bill? Like, we didn't ask for this.
Come on.
Right?
Yes.
But see, because the people got so slack and complacent and lazy and all the other terms through the years. What did congressmen and women do? They took advantage of a weak society who didn't care anymore, who used, I heard it my whole life. That's what Congress gets paid to do. Well, how do you feel about that now? Yeah, well, that's what I do to people. How do you feel about that now? Now I know this has all been an operation, but once again, that's what you do to those people. It goes, I heard that my whole life, literally, me, myself, and I've heard that's Congress's job. That's what they get paid to do. Oh, that's out of our hands. It's too big now. It's just too big. It's out of our control. It'll work itself out. Did it work itself out? No, it did not. All right. That's why we had to have this operation. That's why we had to have the military do what they had to do lawfully in the capacity which they can, and then also the federal laws and orders that have been invoked in the capacity in which they join. That's why it had to look this way, because we have a certain group of society who would have probably, I don't know how much the liberals can fight, because they sure don't look like they can with their purple hair and all the other little stuff that they do, and their little all their guys with their voices where they change their voice, right? But they would have still probably tried something. And because generals and military are about humanity, it's tough sitting in the civilian capacity, but I know how the military operates. Right. Military looks out in the future and goes, now, how will we be judged on this when we get down here, when people look back on history? And, that's why people can respect the military a lot more, especially on Veterans Day, is that, you would want to, in a normal setting, in your normal heart, go, to those people, but we can't. Right. But so it had to be done this way to try to save as many people as possible, to show them as well, hey, you're brainwashed. You're just on the other side of the brainwashing. This is for liberation. And you liberals, you wouldn't know the enemy if it presented it as your mother, because they don't. Their own mother could walk up and be a wolf in sheep's clothing, and they wouldn't know who the enemy is, because they're too worried about surgeries and transgender things that do not. The enemy don't care about what you got in your drawers. Let's just go ahead and let's just be honest here, right? If the enemy's going to capture you, they're going to torture you no matter what. They're going to, whatever it is they're seeking to get out of you, they're not going to care that you're a Democrat, a liberal, and I voted for Kamala, and I wanted to save the world. They don't care about that, right? And none of that matters. See, none of that has anything to do with our federal government. And all these people thinking their rights are being taken away, or your rights taken away yet? Your rights ain't taken away. You have God-given rights and you have human rights all day long. That's right. And that's what this whole operation is to show you, is that ain't nobody taking your rights away. And, jokingly, that if I get to make one joke, I made one joke. I said on my Twitter, and I didn't put everything, I just put one little slogan, but now I'm showing everybody. I said, why don't, if President Trump's a dictator, let's just make him a dictator. And here's how you do it. Whenever liberals go down to the gas pump, to the grocery store, or to pay their taxes, all right, guess what you're going to pay? When you slide your little card in, it's going to go, registered Democrat. Oh, guess what you get? You get $5 to the gallon, or wherever you are. And all the Republicans, registered Republican, $1.50 gas. All right. You're going to go into the grocery store. It's going to scan your card. Registered Democrat. Your eggs are $5 a crate. Registered Republican. You're back to $1 a crate. All right. If that's how we want to do it, then, hey, I will tell President Trump, hey, just for the fun. No, that won't happen that way. All you liberals are going to get the benefit once again from this liberation. Wow. And the first 4 years was a taste of it on purpose. And then he showed you this next 4 of the hypocrisy of what, once again, President Trump proved the swamp, not just Democrats and liberals, Romneys, all the swamp. Right. He proved what all of them for all those years said could not be done. He had a defense budget, the highest defense budget in history, never started a war. Every Democrat, especially, and every liberal said, and even Republicans from years past, they would always cut the economy and the defense budget would go up. Or they did it like that. When the liberals got in, Democrats, the defense budget went down in the economy. That's why they made people think that, a booming economy. No, our defense budget went down. Right. President Trump had this and never started a war with that to get that. So that's what everybody witnessed, and you had to witness it that way. And once you apply that and put all this other propaganda and surface level podcasters, even patriot podcasters are stirring nonsense up. When you put all that aside and you go apply how our government's supposed to function and operate, and what this man has said and what he's done, and then also apply the military portions, it'll all come together.
Wow.
Nothing to be afraid of, nothing to fear. I mean, it's brilliant. It's a beautiful operation.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So, I mean, we're already seeing, Putin's response, hey, yeah, let's get together, let's work together, I mean, all these people, and then at the border, the thousands that were there, they're like, oh, we're turning around, I mean, all this great
See,
stuff.
if you're awake and you know the laws and orders, then you'll know that's too quick for that to happen, right? In another manner. Right. If this was a normal setting, that'd be too quick in another manner, because but it shows what President Trump said the whole time. I will do this. I will do that. This will stop. This will stop. That's going to stop. This, and then it happened immediately. I mean, we're talking about immediately.
Right.
Well,
but yeah,
I'm saying that,
Yeah, Putin you got to remember the soccer ball. Okay. This was already in place, but people now are opening their eyes even more so. So it's so awesome. And we see that a lot of this has already been taking place. So there are some people out there that are saying, okay, we're not going to see, all these wonderful benefits that he's talking about until to the end of his presidency.
I mean, what benefits are they talking about? I mean, what is,
taxes, no taxes, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, no. I mean, you're going to see that instantly. I mean, so, I mean,
told you so.
When the man says something, that's what gets me is it's kind of like being like, I'm drinking out of my Alabama alumni cup, right? Well, Alabama has one of the biggest fan bases out there because we've won a national championship in every decade since the championships. All right. And then we've won an SEC title in every decade all the way up. I take that back. We haven't won in 2 decades a national championship. But this ain't about football, but I'm making a point. We have such a massive fan base, right? That every Alabama fan you meet, they'll say, I'm the biggest Alabama fan you've ever met in your life. Well, there's no scale to prove that. Right. It don't matter how much stuff they can quote, yada, 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 all the history. Well, that makes it better. It makes it more believable, but you still can't, if you get another fan that can name all the same stuff, then there's no way to scale that.
Sure.
Right. So like with President Trump, what gets me about people who say they love and support him is when they turn around and say something that negates or will basically null and void, what the man has actually said or done.
Right.
Now, I'm not the police to walk around and go, you're not really a Trump supporter, or that's not, that'd be a bad job in the first place. I mean, but still, that's just stuff you let go by the wayside and you just keep delivering what's truth and what's validity. But just having some humor with it, a lot of these people that are saying this stuff are actually people that claim to be supportive of him or a follower, or voted for him. And that's what baffles me is I'm like, well, I'm saying, okay, we can have our humor, but let's go back to the serious side. The serious side is this. Our nation was fought and founded by founders who established the military. Well, most Americans love and support our military. Even Democrats and liberals claim they support our military. You cannot support our military without supporting military laws, military orders, military regulations, military customs, military traditions, and then how the military pairs with federal, which are executive orders, national emergencies, proclamations, and international treaties. That's how they pair. Well, everybody's witnessing a military occupation, and it's all validated by military laws, orders, regulations, etc. And then those executive orders, proclamations. Well, to me, like I said, I won't use the term, but it's, to me, you're taking a giant poop on all of our memorial graves across this land when you go and deviate from something that already has a blueprint and validation. I mean, because today is Veterans Day. It's not Memorial Day, but Veterans Day, we honor all of our alive veterans. And then Memorial Day, we honor all of those who have passed. Well, every single one of us, deceased and alive veterans, we all raised our right hand. Alan, your son, it don't matter what age, where we come from, we all raised our right hand under Title 10, Section 502. Well, President Trump's the only one who's federalized the National Guard active duty with Title 10. You can't have one without the other. Like, you either wholly support it or you need to jump off the ship. And it goes back to what Major Jim O'Connor, that's one of the majors. He's a bishop now, but he's a major, special operations, airborne, who's on with us a lot. He's a bishop now. It's like he said the other day. He said, it's real easy, ladies and gentlemen. This is a God operation, spiritual first. All right, then here's all what's going on. Here's what Derek outlines. Here's that. But then there's a fence here. And he said, this over here is the wayside, but even the devil owns the fence. In this time period in history, the devil owns the fence. If you're on the fence, you need to choose your side, because there is most definitely a clear blueprint. And the blueprint of this operation, it liberates everybody. If you are the most staunch liberal you've been in your whole life, like, there's a way to have your liberal ways and live in your household, but not apply it to children, schoolhouses, or policies on the federal level, right? And if your state decides to do something, you don't like it, well, you might need to decide if you've always wanted, you live in Indiana, you hate the snow, you ready to go to Florida. Well, if Florida does something you like, you might need to go on down to Florida. It might be your chance to do it. But once again, when you kick things back to the state level, back to we the people, it frees us up even more. And that's what you're seeing and what you're witnessing. But when you say something, especially if you're a patriot, especially like all these podcasters right now, every single podcaster, and I know a lot of them, and I refuse to go on their shows again. I've told my management, I'm not going on there, because it's a principle. This is military first. I'm a veteran first. Before anything else, I'm a veteran before I'm a country singer. I'm a veteran before I'm a songwriter. I'm a veteran before I do anything rodeo related or anything that I love. I'm a veteran first. And that's where I draw the line, is that this is a military operation first. It's a military occupation with validity, laws and orders. So look at this directive that all these podcasters, DOD directive 5240.01, or that, Joe Biden's weaponizing the military against the people. No, it's not. That DOD has two key components in there that President Trump has all over the board, and also Title 50, which is presidential too, but it's Secretary of Defense, Department of Defense, and clandestine operations, which is unconventional warfare. It all ties in. President Trump invoked Title 50 with a certain clause in Section 1550 of the War Powers Act itself, ladies and gentlemen, which is congressional oversight, meaning both. It's president and Congress. All right, those have not been revoked. That's how laws and orders work. So it's going back to the principles of how laws and orders work. You don't have to be a lawyer to know how laws and orders work. That's what we got in trouble in this nation, was by letting legislators have full control, right? Saying, listen, I have the book as a prop. I can't pull it out, but I've got it under my computer as my prop. But Black's Law Dictionary, I can read that law just like a lawyer can read that law. Ladies and gentlemen, you don't need to be a lawyer to read the law. You got to have a law degree based off our system to practice the law, but you don't have to be a lawyer to read and know the law. All right. So that's where, when a lawyer, they can get offended all they want, but that's where, if you know the law, and then you catch a lawyer not doing something, you go, hey, well, your law book says this right here. You have the degree to walk in that courtroom and represent me and say this, that, and that, and that. That's your job, your role, and that's what I'm paying you for, because you pay them by the hour to go in there to talk to their master, their judge. All right. But it don't mean you can't know the law. And that's how you know if they're representing you the correct way or not. And you can be respectful and honorable to them. Look, everything has a system and etiquette and protocol, but it goes back to how they're using it, right? And that's what this clean out has also been. And President Trump, once again, I screenshot that, which is really awesome. where he said specifically, thank you, God, won all swing states, the popular vote by almost 7 million voters, 312 electoral votes. In the great state of Texas, won 31 of 32 statewide judicial benches, ladies and gentlemen. And every county in the Rio Grande Valley, they were all blue 8 years ago, got 1 million more Texas votes than in 2020. Ladies and gentlemen, there's no other way that Donald Trump would have done that in a normal 4-year capacity. This is a special operation. Now, it's all been done lawfully because they went in and they prevented and they found all the election fraud. So what's going on with Kerry Lake and all that? There's still that those orders haven't gone away. Executive Order 13848 with the national emergency. This is still ongoing. Just because you got your validity, don't mean we're relaxing.
That's
right.
Good.
What you want to happen is what they're doing, right? They're charging out there. These Democrats and liberals are, oh, he rigged the election, he stole the election, he cheated. Sure, it was your group. Now, I know this is a special operation, but for the people who don't, right, it was your group that told the Republicans and conservatives to get over it that Joe Biden got 81 million votes and never left his basement. All right, never. You told the Republicans get over it. All right, now the same group of people, ladies and gentlemen, this is what the special operation does and what it did. Now, this same group of people, what are they doing? They're charging that, oh, where did those 15 and 20 million voters go? Where did they go? When you look back before that, all the elections before that, the numbers were consistent with registered voters. And then that 2020, boom, this spike of all these votes, right? All these dead people and all these dogs and cats they put on ballots and all this massive spike. Now it's back down to the registered voters. Now there's more registered voters in 2024 than there was in 2020. President Trump is currently sitting with 74 million votes. So that's obviously less than what, quote unquote, these Democrats said Joe got. Right. And they're saying, we want to see the results. We want to recount. I don't think you want to recount this time in history because guess what's going on? There's a special operation going on. It's called Executive Order 13848 with a national emergency. And here's why this matters, ladies and gentlemen, to know the laws and orders in place. It's because this, what they're charging. And they say they want to recount. Well, guess what election interference Executive Order 13848 does? It has a national emergency with it. So it means enforcing it. Well, why would Joe Biden, Joe, Kamala, and even Obama and Michelle and all of these people, because I heard even patriots, what if Obama's pulling the strings behind the scene? Okay, let's go with that. I'll go with that now for fun's sake. Let's say Obama's pulling the strings. Why would they have continued President Trump's Executive Order 13848 with a national emergency 4 years in a row, which means enforcing it? When you continue an executive order, that means you're enforcing it, ladies and gentlemen. It means you're keeping it active. All right. It's active all the way to September 2025. They said that President Trump is a threat to democracy. He don't need to be anywhere remotely close to laws and orders. So you continue his law, you continue his order with the national emergency, right, for 4 years in a row, which means you're enforcing it. And it's a very key executive order that tracks all of the election fraud and all the election interference. And it's your people who put President Trump in quote unquote court for a hooker 20, 30 years ago that you can't prove, but you call him a felon. You call him a felon, but it's also your guy you claim got 81 million votes, who when he was a vice president under Obama, they went after their own 3-star general, director of the Defense Intelligence Agency with the Logan Act because he met with someone from Russia, a foreign leader, which the Logan Act, ladies and gentlemen, is 18 United States Code, Section 953, which specifically says private correspondence with a foreign leader. But they called President Trump a felon over a civil matter. If I went to someone, I said, all right, we got a chance. You can go after President Trump with a civil case with a hooker that you can't prove 30-something years ago. All we can do is just word of mouth it and spread some drama out there and get all these people all stirred up. Or we could get him with a federal law, federal offense. We can invoke the 25th Amendment on him because, ladies and gentlemen, since April 2024, he's met with 7 leaders 8 different times at Mar-a-Lago, on the phone, and at Trump Tower, which is private correspondence with a foreign leader. This is what Obama And Biden went after their own 3-star general of the DIA. Oh, we can get President Trump and we can invoke the 25th on him and he can never serve again. Which one would you like? Think I'll go with the civilian matter. Forget the federal, because that's what they've done, ladies and gentlemen. All right, they're calling him a felon, but they could actually, you've got visual evidence. There's no way President Trump, if he was a former president, he couldn't say, no, I did not, because it's all over the news and it was all over True Social. President Trump saying, I'm meeting with so-and-so today. Like, this is so humorous in another manner. Like, it's like, I don't know. I used to love when Tucker Carlson would laugh on his show because it was like when someone would say something and he would go, like, are you seriously going to go with that? Because I just presented you with a civilian trial and a federal, and you went with a civilian. I don't think you want to do that. That's what they done, ladies and gentlemen. That's how easy this stuff is, because we all have visual evidence of President Trump and him saying, I'm meeting with so and so and so and so and so and so and so, 7 leaders. Ladies and gentlemen, he's not a former president. Like, all this stuff is so, but so you take the executive, you want the election results? We can show them to you, because guess what, ladies and gentlemen, the National Guard have been in control of the elections the past 5 years. And they've also reported that on nationalguard.mil. All right. And then just the other day, all over the media, 18 states, cybersecurity teams activated. So they called this to show this is all still part of the operation, and that will come to fruition via laws. Somewhere down the road, this is going to come, and there will be a resolution to the election fraud. They called the state of California, Washington, to Kamala at 0% reporting. All right. And then they called Utah and one other state for President Trump at 0% reporting. Ladies and gentlemen, that shows you this is an operation. It's not cheating in a normal 4 years. It's not that. It's an operation. But you won't know that until you know the laws and orders in place. But there's so much validity everywhere around the board to show that President Trump is not a former president.
Get the book. Get the book.
It's just.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And I did a breakdown last night. So I have a new video right now currently on my Rumble, but it's also on my Facebooks, where I broke down the DOD Directive 5240.01 and the executive orders that are in one of President Trump's new lawsuits versus the United States about assassinations. Wow. All right. That's 4 months before what everybody thought they witnessed on July 13th, which is all a special operation. The assassination is also in that diagram of the special operations. It says assassination, comma, forming favorable public opinion, parentheses, advocating national cause, close parentheses, comma, creation of distrust of established institutions. That is in that diagram of the Special Operations Command. Every one of those things happened. Yes, it formed a favorable public opinion. Yes, advocated a national cause. It wasn't just Pennsylvania. And then also creation of distrust. But then the Secret Service director, the very next week of that quote unquote assassination, just that quick, here they were having those people that quick. In our old law system, that would have taken a year or 2 or 3 years to drag out. The very next week, see, it shows stuff on every level of validation that this is operation, it's all planned. But the very next week, Secret Service directors under Congress, and what did she say? When she was asked a question about what happened with President Trump at this quote-unquote assassination attempt, she said, well, in a normal sitting president situation, but in a continuity government, boom, it shows you. So what people do is they get their emotions involved. It's because they don't know there's something going on. Now, if you had no clue about this going on and you got all upset, well, it did what it was supposed to do, because it formed you a favorable public opinion in the special operations. And then it also advocated a national cause. Well, most people joined together and said enough's enough, people-wise. At the level which you're at right now, it accomplished what it was supposed to accomplish. But now, people like me can take you a little higher to show you that it was all part of a special operation to also liberate the world on a different level. There's massive cleanouts going around all around the world. And we can't eradicate all evil, but we can suppress it enough to get control of it, and then put people in prison that need to be in prison on all walls, all crimes. And we got to get tough again. We got to have people who stop all. Look, if you want to be a prison minister, that's fine. But when you're going in there advocating that someone who maliciously murdered 5, 10, whatever the number, don't really matter. But when you say that they have a life and they need justice, no, they're getting justice. Like we got to get back to toughness in this world.
Yeah, oh my gosh, absolutely. And I tell you, there's this one guy, oh gosh, what is his name? Oh, he's gonna kill me. I just did an interview with him. He's a famous rodeo guy, right? And he recommends area clothing, and so he's like a a promoter of that. And so I
Well, it's
met
not Tough Hedeman. It's not Tough
him.
Hedeman because Tough Hedeman is another brand, so I can say
Uh,
that.
gosh, what's his name? Ron Dingles. Have you ever heard
Oh
of
yeah,
Okay, so
yeah.
yeah, so I'm talking to him like at this boot shop because Alan just bought me LaCasey boots. So I was like,
Mm.
woohoo. So anyway, we're talking and it's their like grand opening or something like that. And he goes, "Hey, are you for Trump?" And I'm like, "Come on now." And he goes, he says, "I have to tell you something." He goes, "When he got shot, that's it." He goes, "Area didn't want me to say anything political, but he said that broke the camel's back. I was doing it. I was on the air saying, 'Guys, I don't care. I love Area, Area, but I am going to say Trump is our man.'" And honestly, he was surprised because he thought that they were really going to come after him for that, but they didn't. They didn't. So he was just like, so I had to have him on the air. I'm like, "Okay, dude, you have to share your story about this, because
You know what's cool about Ariat?
yeah,
Ariat is founded by females, so it's
really?
all female. Oh yeah,
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah,
Oh my gosh.
yeah.
Automatically
So
you think of man, cowboy,
yeah, you do, and it's a massive brand out there too.
yeah.
So because I wear a lot of their gear,
Oh,
so yeah.
cool. Oh my gosh.
But they don't play that card, which is what's cool. They just
Right.
they have a great brand and great stuff. And
Yeah.
so but yeah, for the ladies out there that didn't know that.
I know. I totally did. But see that's exactly what happened. What you just said is that it made people aware, and so they now are engaging. So do you think that I have two more questions. Do you think
Cool.
that President Trump will that he will oh, how do you say this? Okay. So everybody's waiting for the 20th, but he's already doing this stuff now. But do you think it will be out there more that, hey, forget the 20th? Does that even
I
make
mean, well, first the 20th is part of our, like we can decide on when our inaugurations are.
Mhm.
1933 is when it changed from March the 4th to January the 20th. So it still has to be done lawful. Anything has to be done lawfully.
Mhm.
But to make that point, listen, there's so many validity checks all across the board that, like I said, I tell people, if you want to argue at this point, then you're in trouble because there's just so many validity checks. But if you go back to February this year, February, when he was standing at the border in Texas, right? They made Biden go to quote unquote Brownsville that day. And to this day on Brownsville, on the .gov site of Brownsville, Texas, it specifically says the 47th president comes. Biden's not come on, people. They can go in there and edit that to this day. So there's stuff that they do that shows you this is fake. There's always some little nugget somewhere somehow that's fake. Well, President Trump was down in Del Rio that day on the border with the governor of Texas and the adjutant general. Well, that was a chain of command rank structure. The adjutant general reports to the governor unless the National Guard are federalized under Title 10. Well, President Trump's the only one who's federalized. Alabama and Michigan just sent their troops to Texas just last week. San Diego, California, South Dakota just sent theirs down to California a couple weeks ago. All
Oh,
right, so I say all that to say this. That was in February 2024. That was a valid visual that President Trump, that was a chain of command rank structure in the military since it's Veterans Day. We don't at ease a former president, because if a former president is not a veteran in the first place, but it still doesn't matter. We only at ease active officers or current officers. If even if they're National Guard, they're still active per se if they're walking in a situation.
Right.
But in the morning time, when the officer or your tops walks in, you better say it. Yeah, at ease, like that, and everybody stops and puts their hand. But you don't have time to even. They're so good at that point, you don't even have time to get your hands behind your back. They'll go carry on, right? Because they walk in. It's just a thing that we do, right? It's honor, respect. Well, this commanding officer, right? This adjutant general, the commanding officer of all the armed forces of Texas, he's already been in and out of that fob all day because that's his operating base, right? So he would have been already, command already to do that morning. So when you see this video and you see the commanding officer walk in the fob and you see President Trump walking behind, they go, at ease. Well, what I'm saying is they would have already done that morning for that officer. They at ease because they knew President Trump was walking in, the commander in chief. All right, because there's only one reason why the adjutant general is making an appearance with President Trump. It's not because he's a former president. That right there would have been election interference had that been a real situation of a former president, because President Trump being on the campaign, that would have been election. No matter how much you dislike the president, no matter how bad a job they would have been doing, you still don't do that. That would have been President Trump violating his own law and national emergency by doing so. That showed validity there. The reason why I bring all that up is this. In February, John Bolton, who had worked under the Trump administration, right? John Bolton was on CNN. Now, this is the one time I tell people reading doesn't work for you, because what the media does, the media is under a wartime code right now as well. And it's all validated by one of President Trump's executive orders, telecommunications. The Telecommunications Act of 1996 is the actual title, Title 47 U.S. Code 606, which is actually titled War Powers of the President. He can control TV, radio, and internet broadcasts during a time of war. All right, well, if you look at John Bolton on CNN, you can't read this because the media is under a code. You got to listen to him, though. The host asked John Bolton about President Trump. Can he win something about like winning a second term based on all the charges that's on him, something like that. And it says that question on the bottom line there. But John Bolton says, well, the Constitution bars President Trump from a third term. He said, but I feel that he will seek to have a convention to amend the Constitution to have a third term. Well, it don't matter if that's, what he's actually alluded to is that probably somewhere you might see an amendment to the Constitution for future sake, because Congress violated the Constitution in 1951. Nowhere in our Constitution does it say that the Congress is to put term limits on the president. Now, we can decide what day we vote. We can decide that. That's the statute of 1845 right now. It's been in place since 1845. We can decide certain things, but there's nothing in our Constitution that says to put term limits on the president or the Congress. Now, could we all come together and as a nation and decide that? Well, we could, but it would still go against the Constitution. But that's what they did in 1951. So there's a way that president can expand his powers. That was decided on in the Eisenhower years. It's called a Presidential Emergency Action Document. Well, why does President Trump quote Eisenhower all the time and about deportation? Right? Not only is it about deportation, but he's also quoting Eisenhower. This is all God divine and how things all came together. But in the Eisenhower term, the Presidential Emergency Action Documents were established. They are pre-prepared. They're already prepared. Executive orders, proclamations, and national emergencies already prepared by the Department of Justice, presented to the president for him to sign really fast, where they don't have to stop and go create these orders during a time of a catastrophic event. They're already prepared. He signs them really fast, and then he reports that to Congress. But it's prepared by the DOJ, the Department of Justice. Very key right there. All right. So President Trump, when you go back and look at the timeline and all the executive orders he put into place and how rapid he did it, it will show you that presidential emergency action document. Now, that's draft classified. You can't Google a PED until it's declassified in the future. All right. But there's enough evidence around that to show that a presidential emergency action document was used because President Trump expanded his power as president. Now, I've told people it's been a plan from the get-go, but for the average mind out there, they say, oh, he can only serve 2 terms. PEDS, Presidential Emergency Action Documents. Now, it was a plan from the get-go, and here's how you can prove that. You can go to YouTube and look up the president's own, the Marine Corps band, who just had their 249th birthday yesterday, United States Marine Corps. Go to YouTube. Their YouTube page opened in 2012. Well, guess what they do not have on there? They do not have the inauguration of President Trump or Joe Biden on there, but you visually saw them playing for it. But even though everything you saw with Joe Biden, they were all fake soldiers. None of the uniforms were correct. Well, when you go look on WhiteHouseMilitaryOffice.gov, ladies and gentlemen, when you see the Marine Corps flying around with the president, that is the White House Military Office that does that. Why doesn't President Trump have a White House Military Office archive? He doesn't have one. The last White House Military Office archive is Obama. Why doesn't President Trump have an archive of the White House Military Office? It's because he tells you, they said I have been, he says this all the time, they say I have been to D.C. 17 times. Who is that? Right? This is President Trump saying they said I've been to D.C. 17 times. That tells you right there, ladies and gentlemen, D.C. has not been functioning and operating in a normal capacity. This has been a military operation from the get-go, a military occupation. All right. So when you apply all that, can we amend the Constitution? Yeah, we can, but there's certain things we can and can't do. But it could be to where, they moved the inauguration date lawfully, which is what they did in 1933. They moved it from March the 4th to January the 20th. But is that necessary? I don't think so. But we'll see. But what people need to really focus on is President Trump never left. This is an operation from the get-go. And so January 20th, it don't matter if they moved it back to March the 4th. He's still your sitting commander and a wartime commander.
Right. That's good. That's good. Okay. So remember when he spoke about the different states, that different departments will be in different states. Okay. So that solidifies the fact too about DC. I mean, Washington, DC, not even in operation. So when they say, oh, President Trump's coming back to Washington, DC, or the White House, who says that the White House is in DC? Right? It could be it could be Texas.
It could be. Well, and here's how you prove that lawfully is you go look over, see, all of this has been a distraction too. So like if you found me along the way, some people say, well, why can Derek Johnson say what he's saying if this is all an operation? I'm like, because it's all been publicly given. Like you got to know where to find the stuff. It's all there because they have to put this stuff out, but you got to go piece it together like a puzzle, right? But for the people who did follow along, people that do understand military operations, there's always a, hey, look over here. And there's something going on over here. Hey, look over here. Look over here. And the people who look, well, they're supposed to look. And the people who go, oh, there's something over here. Let's go over here. Well, so it's like the Chinese balloon, right? There's been multiple quote unquote Chinese balloons. I screenshot one the other day. I said, here's another Chinese balloon with a United States registration. I have on file the Chinese balloon that the whole U.S. made all the, it's got United States registration. It was a, hey, look over here. And it distracted people for a couple more weeks. And that got them hung up on that. And then that went away. And then they distracted something. It's been a distraction piece, right? So that's kind of what's going on with all of this, is that it's a distraction that, hey, look over here, look over here, look over here. and then there's something going on over here. So, President Trump, he has to keep civil rest and civil peace in certain manners too. So
Mhm.
that's why when people say, well, why does he say certain things? And why was he, like the other day, he said, I'm 45th and 47th. Well, it's because he's talking about presidential. He's not a president right now. He's a wartime commander. It comes with a different role, duty, obligation. So there's certain things that just don't apply, and there's certain things that do, and there's distraction pieces. So that's, it's a distraction piece. And then a lot of things are distractions. Just like, hey, look over here, look over here, look over here. And then something's going on over here.
Mhm.
But
So
now,
different states is
and so getting back to that is that on January the 15th, 2021, oh, look at all the distractions. So you had January the 6th. You had January the 10th and the 13th. President Trump was in Texas. He was all over. He was doing the speech, and he did a speech at Alamo, Texas, which was a symbolism of what happened at the Alamo. He did that on purpose because he had the border wall and it was named Alamo. So there was a two-piece there. Even though he wasn't at the Alamo in San Antonio, it was a two-piece part. That has a whole breakdown that I talk about. There was all this rapid-fire visuals, right? And then you had your J6, all that. Just people were all, boy, you talking about mass pandemonium in a good way. It's all special operations because the Executive Order 13848 solves what happened on January the 6th. So all that distraction, the only person who could have put the military in D.C. during that time period, ladies and gentlemen, was the Commander in Chief, Donald John Trump. He's the only one who could have put them there. So all the other stuff was distraction. Right in the middle of all that, there was a piece that no one saw during that time period. So the GOP office, the Government Publishing Office, the GPO, excuse me, but GPO, not the GOP. That people take that the wrong way. But the GPO, right? Government Publishing Office, government office is what I was going with, but the Government Publishing Office put out the first reissue of the Federal Continuity Directive 1. That was January 17th, 2017, 3 days before President Trump took over. That booklet is your continuity of government, your continuity of operations, right? Outline. Then the second one came 5.5 months in President Trump's first visual term, June 13th, 2017. It's FCD 2. Well, they have certain publications under those. All right. Well, one of these publications came out January the 15th, 2021, and it's titled The Reconstitution of the Executive Branch.
wow.
Well, that executive branch, ladies and gentlemen, that's president, vice president, and his cabinet.
Wow.
Right. Well, in section 2.3 of that whole publication, it specifically says when the new seat, like a seat, ladies and gentlemen, that you have a county seat in every county, right? There's a seat of government in every county, and it works its way up all the way to the Supreme Court and with the courts, and then also with DC, right? When the new seat of government cannot be established in Washington, D.C., Congress and their enumerated powers will get with the states to reestablish a new seat of government. That is in this publication that came out called Reconstitution of the Executive Branch, January the 15th, 2021. That's why you got to know like what matters. All that other stuff was to make people look here, and it really distracted the you know what out of them.
Oh my gosh.
But President Trump talked early on in 2017 about the new deal with Boeing. He said we'll have a new Air Force One. We're going to have a new everything, right? There's going to be new doomsday planes. We have new everything. What are the odds that President Trump's going to get to ride in the new Air Force One, right? And guess what it's painted like? It's the same paint job as JFK Jr.'s paint job on the aircraft that he quote unquote crashed, right? So, ladies and gentlemen, you got to see the divinity of this first, the God and the godly timing of all the numbers. It should give everybody chills, like it should. I get chills every time I talk about it.
Yes.
Right? I get, it's there, and so it's not rewriting history, but it's exonerating things of the past, moving forward. Because the Ukrainian phone call, same thing. Richard Nixon, they tapped his phone. You're watching the exoneration part. And President Trump said, I will be exonerated 100%. completely exonerated, right?
Yes.
That means liberals, ladies and gentlemen, will see the truth. Like, so it's just not, I don't need him exonerated. Like, people like me don't need him exonerated. Liberals and the people who held severed heads up, they need him exonerated, not me. So when you apply all that and then you go back to that, no. And then, like the Department of Defense, I know because I have people who have worked in these capacities and still do, and different people. I know a lot of brilliant people, and way up here, I know a lot of top secret people. But the DoD, I mean, you can go to Reno. They've been the Air Force One has been in and out of Reno a lot, and different components of our military been in and out of Reno. Someone was on the runway, the tarmac one time, a regular civilian. This went viral in their video, and they said, "What is?" And they knew this person, whoever this person was. They were like, "What is Air Force One doing in Reno?" Like, it's over there. But I've been to Reno a bunch, and the DoD's been operating out of Reno, and it's not secretive. One, you're not going to get around it in the first place. Two, the other validity is the presidential call sign, Sam. Biden and Kamala have not flown one single time with a presidential call sign, Sam, Special Air Mission, Sam. Well, all the Department of Defense are flying with the Sam call signs. I bring that up to say every time I show Air Force One in the sky, the old VC-25s, number 28,000 and number 29,000, I filter out and put all the civilian aircraft. Just the other day, they said Biden was in Germany when it was flying across the Atlantic. No call sign, first off. And then two, ladies and gentlemen, it wouldn't matter if that was a real situation, and it wouldn't matter how bad you dislike somebody. You should not want that. You should not want that judgment cast on you to wish that something would happen to a president anywhere for that matter. But they showed all aircraft flying over and under Air Force One on live track flight radar. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a violation of FAA guidelines.gov 7210.3DD. You don't get anywhere remotely close to the president, the vice president, or the president's family. That's just, you got to know this stuff, right? You would not have aircraft anywhere, and it tells you anywhere in the proximity. Also, when they show Biden or Kamala anywhere at the airport, all air traffic is to stop at a certain point, even on the ground. You can watch videos of aircraft landing and taking off all behind Biden and Kamala. That would not happen, ladies and gentlemen. That's a national security risk majorly. If that was a real situation and a real president, you wouldn't want that. No matter how bad you think they are and dislike them, you still wouldn't want that, because that would create all kind of catastrophic events if we had real enemies in the world in a normal situation. Because then what would the enemies do? Take advantage of that situation. During a moment of chaos, that's when the enemy really takes advantage. So there's so much validity around the board for people to see that everything's under control. There's nothing to fear. Anybody who's any podcaster, and I don't care if I know them personally. This is where, once again, I draw the line of a veteran and military. This is where you draw. Anyone who's spreading fear, ladies and gentlemen, you got to revert back, especially if you're Christian. The Bible says, I didn't give you the spirit. God said, I didn't give you the spirit of fear, but of love, of power, and a sound mind. So, faith is no good unless it's tested in the first place. But now's the time to put your faith where your heart is, where your lips have been. Now's not the time to be all faith right here. The faith is right here, and the faith is right here, because there is a clear blueprint that gives you the validity of solace, tranquility, peace, and comfort. And yes, there are casualties. And we're all subject to be a victim of a casualty, because we're all part of this operation on every level that we're at. But once again, if I was a victim of it, then someone should take my torch and pick it up and run with it, because this is an operation. And somewhere along the way, and ain't far off, people are going to see that. You're going to see that peace, and you're going to see that restoring the laws and orders like President Trump. I will restore laws and orders. He didn't mean, what you've seen the last 4 years in the sense of a normal setting. When he says restore laws and orders, it means to bring them back, meaning that the Constitution has been suspended. You've been in a military occupation, but nothing to fear. Once again, so you got to take those and your laws and your orders and coincide your no fear. It's all about your attitude and perspective. And once again, this man is not a preacher. He's not a therapist. He's not a counselor. He's not a coach. He's not any of that. He is the chief executive officer of the executive branch. He is to enforce the laws. And when the laws cannot be enforced, he has to do what? Take proper measures of what the Constitution says. That's what the suspension clause is when the law cannot be enforced, the president can suspend the Constitution called the writ of habeas corpus. That's Article 1, Section 9, Clause 2 of the Constitution. So no one can say it's unconstitutional because it most certainly is constitutional. And you witnessed that. So it's all about, if you've never heard it before, don't panic, don't fear. There's a plan. There's most definitely a blueprint. And that's what my book did, was I took all that, you take all the economy stuff out because that matters in another manner. With that book, I pull all the military laws and the federal that pair with them to show you that entity of what makes the military occupation. And then show you the continuity of government stuff that when you, like I said, when you read those 8 national essential functions, if you don't know the difference in a military government and a continuity of government, they're very similar because those 8 national essential functions says to maintain a constitutional government, to maintain our military. It looks very similar, but it goes back to what laws are being commanded and the orders being given to which of components are operating those. And that's why it's very keen and you got to see that. But, you know, everybody should want to because that's what this is all about. This was never about just, 4 more years and 4 great years. This was about a clean out to make every 4 years in the future, not every 4 years. It'll be a president who is on behalf of the people. It's not supposed to be Republican, Democrat. It's not supposed to be us arguing and bickering over things that don't matter. It's supposed to be a government that works for everybody on that level. State governments depend on where you live and what state you're in. Some states don't need certain laws that other states have. It'll depend on that. And then your local level. And then if you're tribal, it applies to you as well in the tribal sense because tribal is also a part of all this. So it's to get things in a flow, to be consistent, and to not have, not be a dirt road like or when you're on a bad aircraft ride and that's every time I'm on a plane, don't ride with me if you hate turbulence because I get all the aircraft rides with the turbulence. So if you hate turbulence, you're one of those. Like I never have good rides, but if it's kind of like that, it was not supposed to look like this, ladies and gentlemen, and it's not going to look like that in the future.
Yes.
Right?
Hallelujah. That this one party, I can remember when Kim Clement, a prophet, very strong prophet, he prophesied, and I'm sure you've heard of him, 2-term president, blah, blah, blah. And he said, I see that, and look at RFK, they're coming together in unity, and that's what President Trump wanted all along. And so with that, what do you see in the first couple months?
Oh man, it's going to be. I think it's going to be. I think that's where all the veterans might. Of course, we have enough military. We have enough military vets that have a reserve clause that have an active reserve clause that they won't get to guys. My dad's like, "Come on, put me in, coach." I'm like, "Dad, they ain't coming after you. I promise you that." He's like, "Oh, I could drive a tank. I could do something." I was like, "Yeah, you probably could, but it's just not going to happen for us." But there are clauses and there's still processes. But President Trump's already said, on day one that things are going to start. Tom Homan is the Tom Homan is the man. He's a great guy. I've met him, and but his hand is looks like. My dad years ago, Evander Holyfield, his dad worked for my dad for years, and I got to meet him before he passed, and when I shook his hand, I was like, my God, his hand was like
Wow.
2 of mine, and my dad said, "Can you imagine, even in a boxing glove, can you imagine that hand hitting you in the face?" And I'm like, not even in a glove, I can't imagine something. Well, Tom Homan, his hand is like that thick. And when I first met him, he just, he punched me right in the ribs. I mean, just like, hey, buddy, you know, like, yeah, you know, I'm like, oh no, like, you know, like, I mean, it's like, I mean, this guy is like, he's the real deal, right? And he's someone that I look up to and, you know, aspire to be in all kinds of other ways too. But I'm like, God, I mean, like my guy, he's the real deal. So, you know, President Trump means what he means, and people have to see certain things. People have to see it, and we have to get through it. And I think that that's what people are going to see the first couple months. You know, naturally, I think he gets it. You know, President Trump looks like what the military looks like. I was explaining this yesterday to someone. I said, you know, every veteran knows this feeling. Every person who's in the military, they're still living it. But every veteran knows this. Civilians might grasp it if they'll apply it. But in the military world, man, one day in the military is about like a month or a month and a half in the civilian world because you get so much stuff done. It's so task oriented during the day. And if you got time, like they say, if you got time to be on your phone, you got time to be doing something else, right? Until the day is called. And, you know, so it's one of those things where, you know, President Trump, he gets so much stuff done in one day that, you know, it's hard to keep up. That's why this stuff is so rapid fire. And I tell people that you don't even need all the other propaganda and all these other podcasters that push propaganda, because when you get down just the laws and orders alone, President Trump is rapid fire. And he goes in, he's signing this, he's doing this, he's doing that. Well, I think that's what people are going to see is rapid fire everything. I think that, you know, I don't think that, you know, gas is just going to go bam like that. I don't know. It could. But, you know, I think people just need to enjoy it first off, the process of you know, uh, the ones that can, though, the ones that can see this video, the ones that can see certain things, like I think people need to reflect on that day when he raised his right hand. Yes, enjoy that moment, but then not so much, you know, not pay attention to what he does, but really reflect on, if you have me in your life at this point, go watch the videos, go study, go read the laws and orders. They're still there. They're going to always be there. They're going to always be, you know, for you to read and be available. Go study that to appreciate what you're about to witness, because it's going to be rapid fire, but it's also going to be rapid fire, meaning that whoever's going to be the candidate of 2028 moving forward, we're going to be in a completely new system, completely cleaned out, where once again, he said specifically, now this is President Trump, but I believe it. He said starting May next year, this coming year, May, every single day, we're going to have all these athletes from all over the world. We're going to have all these like different events where people get involved all over the U.S., all over, people coming over from all over the world, and athletes, great athletes, getting children involved, getting children off their phones. That's what that means.
Oh,
Getting children active again, right? RFK is going to go in. I think that's going to happen pretty rapid. Going to go in and knock out all this clutter we've had in our life with all this bad food and all these different things we have in our food. Matter of fact, there was an article put out just a while ago. I was going to see if I could find it, but there was an article about how, let's see, where did it go? It was FDA to finally ban a certain FDA to finally ban controversial ingredient in popular decongestants. So they're already starting, right? So, I mean, this is, well, some of that could also be, oh, we don't want them to find out about it, you know, but still, like, this can be rapid fire there. So I think if people would see that every single day, May, then he said May to July the 4th, 2026. And then he said every single day from our birthday, our 250th birthday, every single day for a year after that, we're going to celebrate.
Yeah.
Well, to get, once again, liberals, because the liberals are the ones who are acting like communists and fascists and socialists and Marxists, to get that entity to celebrate America the way he's talking about, that means there's going to be some massive closure from the disclosure of what's taken place this last 9 years of this operation. And he said that in one of his last speeches. He said that. And of course, they made Kamala and them say that too. The past 9 years Well, 9 years off of 2024 is 2015, ladies and gentlemen. That means when President Trump came down the escalator, he didn't even start his campaign until later. So, ladies and gentlemen, that shows you that's alluding, that's your calm. It don't matter who's saying it, that's your calm that this has been an operation. So there has to be closure to it. And I think what's going to happen, I don't know if they're going to do it before or right in the beginning. I don't know. But I believe that somehow, some way, without here's this is my opinion, but here's how also he did a capitulation tour. He got all these nations. Well, when you think of these nations, you have to apply this as well. You have to apply their culture, you have to apply their government and their laws. All right. So let's say that they bring all these different people. It can't be President Trump that exonerates President Trump. It can't be his Supreme Court that exonerates him. It's going to have to be something like a G20 or a G7 where all these leaders of all walks of life, all nationalities, all ethnicities, all different cultures, all different governments, and all different laws come and say, we've all been in this operation, da 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 da, right? And then no liberal can claim racism, homophobia, anything. All that to be tossed aside to show this has been a world operation, because it's not just a U.S. operation. This is a world operation. Yesterday, Guatemala was flying around Texas in a Cessna, ladies, on a regional airport. That's not how we operate. That's not how we train pilots, ladies and gentlemen. That's all day, every day. I show one or two aircraft a day because I have 34,000 photos in my phone right now. If you want to know how many your iPhone can hold, I'll tell you. It's 34,000. And then it starts telling you to delete or your phone will crash. And it's already crashed on me one time, so I can tell you it's 34,000 without extra Gmail and all that other stuff. Like I can tell you right now what it'll hold. But if I were to take photos all day, every day of the aircraft, I wouldn't have a phone. I wouldn't have an operating phone, right? So I post just a little in hopes that people will go get the app themselves and look at it. It's a free app, you know. Well, these foreign entities, 99.9% of them are on National Guard bases, regional, county, and municipal airports. That's not how we operate in the military, ladies and gentlemen, unless there's a certain operation going on. And that's what you're witnessing. So it's all day, every day. They're still up. The National Guard are up all day, every day. The National Guard, ladies and gentlemen, they're 1 week in a month, 2 weeks of active duty a year. Why are they active every single day in their states and out of their state jurisdictions? To be out of their state jurisdictions, they are federalized. The only person who's federalized them is President Donald John Trump way back in 2020. Title 10's invoked. Those have not been revoked. So all those entities go in. So, you know, it's going to be a rapid fire. He will terminate those at some point in the future. When and how, where, it doesn't matter. But you know, I don't know, and I don't like to speculate what will happen just for the sake of, you know, it's not about being right or wrong, but still, you know, I think what people should do is once they ever like hear someone like me that has full validity, and I've been with him 9 times this year alone, you know, it is to realize that it's not about me. I'm a veteran getting to serve beyond my service and keep my oath. And this will help all of us. It benefits all of us. It's a massive clean out of all the corruption of years past to reset our foundation, to move forward, and to love and honor this man and what he took on. He's still the face of it, even though there's multiple men and women behind the scenes, the generals, etc., all the world leaders and U.S. leaders that are a part of this, and even in special operations. Some of those who have been playing bad roles aren't bad, ladies and gentlemen. I believe they will unveil that as well. I hope they do, and I believe they will, because special operations require actors that look a certain way, that were smoking out rats. All right. Because what happens is when you go against President Trump and you look like one of his key people, what does it make people do? It makes people loose and soft around them, and they go, oh, that guy was President Trump's right-hand dude, and he just said this. Well, I'm going to say it now. And then, boom, got him. You pull. So it's a special operation. All right. But if you love and support this man, you would seek to know what he did and what his face became the face of, his imagery, right? Because he knew long before this happened, right here, he knew that he was going to be hated, mocked, ridiculed, persecuted. He knew all the different imagery, all the severed heads. I mean, think of all this stuff. We're talking about, we've reached the ultimate depth on the left side. When you hold a severed head of a person up, right? If that'd be me or you doing that, they would ostracize us and want to hang us, right? But it's the whole exposing the do as I say, not as I do, right? That's the real exposure. And so if you really love and support this man, you would seek to know that. And that right there is full exoneration in itself before you ever get to exoneration day, if you can read that blueprint quicker than the days of which they start exonerate. But I mean, it's still going to be exciting though. Like, it's not like, but we just can't bask in the wrong way, right? Because you got to have the no man left behind mentality. That even liberals, as aggravating as they've been, and as whatever the terms you put on them, a lot of them still can be saved because they're just on the other side of the fence, brainwashed, like you were brainwashed on this side of the fence. We've all been lied to our whole lives. And we all had to come to an awakened moment, escape the matrix. Every one of us had to escape it. I grew up under the Bushes, the Clintons. I grew up under that. I knew what Fox News said. That's all we had that we knew of, that I knew of, until I reached a certain age of adulthood. And then when I went in the military, and key components of certain people saying, hey, 9/11, come on, man, look at this, and look at this, and look at this, and started putting it together. Then I escaped it. And then what happened to me in the military and all the other stuff that when I put all the pieces of the puzzle together from 2015 to present day, like, everybody had to escape it somehow in your own capacity. So we can't beat everybody up. Now, we can be tough when we need to be, but we can't leave them behind. So that's what everybody's supposed to be doing is no matter what it looks. That's why I tell these podcasters. I've had podcasters tell me, they'll say, well, not everybody can grasp it like you can. I said, it doesn't matter. You don't know that. You got to give them the food and give them the tools and let that decide on their part. But if you never give them the tools, then you're just misleading them with propaganda, and you're doing what you claim the fake news media on the other side's doing. You're just doing the polar opposite of it. So if you never give a person an opportunity and a chance, they can yell at me, cuss at me. People can do whatever they want. It ain't going to change this dash. That dash ain't moving nowhere. Say all the F-bombs you want to say. There it is. It ain't moved. Say all you're full of hogwash. It ain't moved. It's right there. That means continuous. So it's like I tell people, cuss me, yell at me, hate me, mock me, ridicule me. Hey, I have a commander that tells me that I'm doing a great job. I have people that's under him that says, hey, you're doing a great job. You're doing your service. What's your time? So let people do what they're going to do. But if you don't stand up and get in that position, it goes back to 2 Peter 2:21-22, that once you've heard, if you heard it and you don't go study it, when history accounts for this, if you really want a platform, when history accounts for this, I'm the guy who I say this. I'm not going to tell I don't tell God what I'm not going to do. I've already learned that in my life. But what I tell people is this. I'm like, I didn't do this to have a platform. So in a joking manner, God knows why I mean this in my heart. I don't mean this but I'm saying, I was a guy who didn't want a platform and will actually probably have a platform with all this. Yeah. And all the ones who wanted a platform and want a platform down the road, who wanted it and always wanted it. Well, it ain't gonna be no if, but when they start revealing all this, well, it may be me who actually didn't seek a platform that gets the platform, and the one who've always wanted it and built a platform, built it up. If you don't get on that program, and when that's fully, and you've had me on your show before, people who have had me, and you didn't study that and seek to understand that, well, this whole operation was to wake people up, to bring people out of the mire, to bring people out of the propaganda, to bring people out of the fake news, the very thing President Trump can't stand. This was to liberate people from even that. And we were never supposed to sit on our phone 8 hours a day. We weren't designed to do that. We have families, we have dinner tables, we have communication we got to get back to, we have eye contact we got to get back to. Boy, if I were the commander in chief, you wouldn't like me. If I was a commander in chief, I'd be knocking out some cell phone towers, right? I'd be like, yeah, get that one, get that one, get that one. Yep. We gonna go back to old school. Hey, you want to talk trash? Come over to the front yard, say it to my face. Like that. We go back to some old school if I was commander in chief, right? We would stop a lot of stuff, but they didn't do it that way. But we need to get back to that. Get all the relationships, whether it be professional or personal, that have been ruined over a text message or an email. Just because, well, he normally puts an exclamation point there, but he didn't do it this time. It's petty stuff. Look at the petty stuff we got to in this nation, right? So that's the stuff that I want people to realize, is that these podcasters out there, they have a role and a duty too, especially if they have a big platform. This is the operation. All right. And so, and I know some of them don't know it right off the bat, and they feel like that because they don't know it right off the bat, they'll lose their followers. Well, you may not need your followers if you can't get with the whole operation. Right now, if you're a Christian and I know you are, but like you have certain platforms out there that talk about God and revelation and everything, that's how that all ties in. That's fine. I'm not knocking stuff like that. But it's when people are trying to put an opinion in what the laws and order, or like that DOD directive that everybody's butchering right now. And I'm like, it's a key component of President Trump. Like, this is awesome. That directive is being butchered. And it's one of the most awesome directives that ties in with everything of the assassination, all right, quote unquote attempt. And it ties in with all these other executive order. It's one of the most key components. And look what people are doing. And it's because they don't have the capacity to hold all of it. And they try to take one little law or one little order, and then they misconstrue it and butcher it, twist it, and manipulate it to fit their fear-mongering tactics or ignorance, right? And I'm like, well, we still have military serving daily who are fighting for this. They may not know what the bigger picture is yet because it's task-oriented. You don't have time in the military to know what everybody in all units are doing because you're in your little niche. But whenever they get out one day and they're retired, and if they care to know what they were a part of and they see it, they're going to be like, wow, I was a part of that. My unit did this. My unit did that. We did this. I flew this mission. I did that. Whatever component you're in, you'll be able to go, wow, I was a part of the greatest operation to liberate the world, not just this country or this. Like, it's going to be that, right? And so that's why it matters, is because, once again, military is about honoring all the men and women who have served, but also took the ultimate sacrifice for this nation, who didn't get to live their lives. I have a relative that got killed at 18 years old in Vietnam, right? Didn't get to live his life, right? And he didn't even have to serve. His older brothers were all drafted. He didn't have to serve. He was the baby. He got his mother to sign him up. He begged because it would be all brothers in Vietnam because all the other brothers got drafted. He didn't get drafted. He could have gotten to stay at home, but he wanted to be part of the brothership of his actual blood brothers.
Wow.
And then he was the one who took the fall. 18, never got to live his life. And people need to apply that out there. I mean, here's while we're on Veterans Day, my great aunt, that was her son. Well, he was missing in action first. And when the soldiers showed up and took their hats and put them under, she already fainted then. They literally said she fainted. And he was missing in action. That's what they reported first. Well, she already fainted on that. And then they said she grieved herself. My baby's missing. My baby's missing. But then when she looked out the window and saw those two soldiers show up the next time, she knew. And she fainted again because she knew that that's the only reason they're there, to say he is KIA, killed in action. All right. That right there, people need to apply that to all the men and women across the board that have taken the fall. And think of every mother who had to stand in that gate or that door, and every father, or if it was an aunt or an uncle, brother, sister, whoever's the guardian or whatnot, think of every person who's had to stand at that door and see those two soldiers roll up and take that hat off and put it on her. People need to apply that. That's why this stuff matters. And that's why I get emotional about it. Even as a veteran, I get emotional because I wear bracelets and I know others. And I have family members. It's just, that's why it matters at the end of the day. And that's why I do get sometimes breath up in my chest is because I know what the bigger picture is and what the ultimate sacrifice is that men and women have made for people to be in this nation, to have their opinions, to have their lives, to have their opportunities. And this is the ultimate to rid all the evil of a facade that everybody's been living thinking you've had a free life and you really haven't. It's all been a facade. We've all lived under a facade. We've all lived under lies. And that's what this operation is to rid all that and to really take off the shackles and the constraints. And we got to honor, though, the men and women that have paid for it no matter what, because the service comes before the war, right? All the wars, yeah, we got to address that as veterans, that these wars a lot were fraudulent, but the service was still there. It's the fact that the men and women, we still signed up, we were still willing to go. All right. And that's what people have to apply out there, that we can be funny when we need to be, but when we need to flip to be serious, this is a serious part. There are men and women serving right now who are part of this operation. And they've been cleaning out the tunnels, the stuff that those men and women have seen. It takes a special kind of heart and warrior to see some of the stuff they see, especially with the children.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, you done brought me to tears because that's so dear to Alan and I, and that's why we have the coffee, the coffee business, Patriots Arise Coffee, and it's, our heart is to give the veterans the coffee for free. So if you're a veteran, call us up. We're gonna send you some coffee.
Mhm.
you know, um, and wow, it really makes a difference. Oh my gosh, yeah, that there was a situation over here in my hometown real quick that they had this huge building and they were saying that they were sending all these illegals in and so forth, blah blah blah. And so me and a bunch of our warriors went over there and prayed, and I went up to the board and I said, there ain't no way that you're going to do this. I'll find money somehow, and I'll put our veterans in this place and children that have been trafficked. We need to take care of our people, and that's what Trump is doing. But we still need to stand up when we see something that's not right. We need to stand up, just like the Declaration of Independence says. We need to continue, and we can't, just because we start seeing all this wonderful things that President Trump has stated, we can't just sit back and go, oh gosh, okay, it's done, it's over. No, it's not. Our assignment
No.
is just begun.
No, it just began. It just begun. It's we. That's what I told people this week. You can bask for a moment, but it's kind of like any great football team. Nick Saban in Alabama said you can celebrate for 24 hours, then we're back to work, right? And it's not about celebration. See, that's the other thing is it's really not supposed to be my president versus yours, right?
Right.
This is our nation. It's
Amen.
supposed to be continuity always, not continuity of government from the standpoint of the actual plan, but it's always supposed to be continuity. It's supposed to be cohesive. It's supposed to be federal on this, states doing their thing, and then local, right? Depending on where you live and what you're doing, and if you're tribal or whatever you are, but still, the federal, especially, it's never supposed to look like this. It was never supposed to look like this. It was always supposed to be federal government that represents we the people all the time moving forward. Never, oh, my president won, yours didn't. Oh, that's his Supreme Court. No, it don't work like that.
Right.
And that's where we got to work harder now, because now it really kicks in. You're right. It really kicks in now, where we go, look, and if someone gets mad at you, cusses at you, whatever, that's fine. Let them roll. They're where they are, where they need to be in their life. And when they get ready, they're going to see some of the stuff. And when they get ready, they'll come back to you. People did that to me in the Army and different places, even in life. People go, why are you so positive? Why are you so positive all the time? Why are you always smiling? Why you always got a good attitude? I'm like, because, here's why. You asked me, so you asked me, I'm going to tell you, right? And then what you do is that's what really being a Christian is. And I'm not here to preach, but I tell people all the time, if you're living your life the way you're supposed to do with God, then you will walk your walk, and someone will recognize that, and they'll go, why are you smiling all the time? Why are you positive all the time? Why, when stuff hits the fan, do you act like, oh, I got this, cool, calm, collective? Well, you asked. Then you get to tell them, I'm a Christian. I read the Bible. The scripture says this. That's when you can do it. It's not the other way around. And a lot of Christians have done this. And this is, look, we've all been guilty somehow, some way, until you finally, what my grandpa always said, the Bible says specifically that you'll reach a point where you put childish things away, right? And you'll think, and that's where, so it's like we're trying to get people to do that a lot sooner than later, right? But still, you'll feel that feeling. Like right now, I'm looking out, I see the sun. I already have that validity from God a few weeks ago, not to get relaxed and complacent, but I now feel that weight lifted off, that, okay, the mission's done from this standpoint, this part of the mission, where it was like real, oh, come on, people, blah, 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 blah. Now it's like, okay, all I got to do now, I have full validity everywhere around the board that I've been correct, and it's not being right or wrong, but I've been correct from the standpoint of, hey, the validity is complete. Now move to the next phase of it and just teach, truth, because the laws and orders will reinstore the words truth and facts, right? That's how you restore those words that have been diluted. But with people out there, being a Christian, well, naturally people they'll judge people. Well, it's like our justice system. Look at our justice system in the last whatever years. They'll have someone that was absolutely innocent, right? But 50% of America already says they're guilty, and they ostracize them and everything else. Well, if that was you, no matter what it may look like, if you're not sitting there seeing all the evidence, and you're not that jury seeing all the evidence, not what the little TV gives you, then if that were you or your child or your family member in that position, you would want to be innocent until proven guilty, which is what our nation's been about, right? And it don't matter what the odds look like, what it looks like all stacked against you, you still want to be that person, once again, that goes, look, you got to see the facts. You don't know me. Don't judge me, right? Well, if everybody will make that applicable in their life, and then bring back Hank Williams, mind your own business and you won't be minding mine, right?
Amen.
That, and live your life the way you do in your household. And as long as you're not hurting anybody, harming anybody, cramming it down children's throats, all those things, there's a way for you to have your life, all right, and make your decisions based on that, but also not make that applicable to everybody around you or try to cram it down everybody's throats. There's a way to do that. And if everybody would apply that, then it will all become reciprocal at some point, right? Because if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing like that, then you won't be putting it on your neighbor, right? If you know your neighbor right next to you is polar opposite than you don't go out there and instigate something with them. What you do is find a common ground. Hey, man, your rose bushes look great. That rain sure did them a justice, didn't it? Find common ground with them, right? It's real simple to do that, right? So a lot of people felt empowered with technology that, oh, I can say whatever, right? Well, I just watched a video earlier. It was a real life. It wasn't some stage video. It was a guy. This guy was in his face, a little short guy in this tall guy's face. And he's like, if you'll walk outside, I'll punch you in the face. And the guy says, okay, let's go. And he starts walking. He's like, come on. And the guy's standing there, not saying anything. Then he walks back over and he says, hey, man, I thought you just wanted to fight. And the guy goes, you act like this, you're in, like you don't want to be touched or something like that. He said, no, how about you take a lunch break? Let's go outside and do what you did. He said, it's guys like you who talk the most. You really don't, and you can't fight, right? He called it, right? Well, it's the same measure. Yes. We've gotten to this society where everybody's wanting to fight and pick a fight and be a fight, but they really don't want to fight, right? Because people like me at the end of the day, I might get my butt whooped, but I'm the kind that says, all right, I'm not going to talk. Let's just, all right, you say you want to whoop me, let's go. Yeah, all right. And you may whoop me, but it doesn't matter. It's the fact that I went outside and didn't talk a lot, right? It's kind of that mentality. We've gotten so in a place where people just want to bark, opinion. Well, opinions don't matter sometimes, depending on what it is. And that's why the Declaration, but also our Bill of Rights are so important. Our Bill of Rights were written for a reason. They all were put together for a reason. They all are cohesive for a reason. You can't have one without the other because the same person, Madison, he was the predominant author of them. The same mindset wrote all of them together for a reason. But what people want is their First Amendment. Oh, I want my freedom of speech. But their freedom of speech doesn't back anything to do with the Constitution or the Declaration of our foundation. And the same Madison, James Madison, who predominantly wrote all the Bill of Rights, was the same guy who went into the Supreme Court and argued in a landslide case that any statute that looks like a law that doesn't support or defend the Constitution is what? Null and void.
Right.
All right. So that means your opinion also is the same way. If your opinion doesn't support our foundation and doesn't support our declaration and support our way of life and support the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, it's null and void if my opinion backs all those. So mine cancels yours out if mine replicates what our foundation looks like. And people have misconstrued that. And we got to get people re-educated. And that's what President Trump said. We got to deal with the ramifications of letting this happen so long. So it's not going to be like everybody out the gate, but I think it's going to be like a 65 to 75% early on, and then just gradually trickle down to that other. But what'll happen is that integrity reinstilled and all these things that people see when they're taxes and this, and they see all this stuff happening from multiple walks of life all over the country. When people see that, it'll ostracize them in a good way, not a bad way. It'll make them want to either do good or go, oh, I'm that stooge or I'm that Grinch or whatever that if they really want to be a good person and they don't want to be viewed as that, well, then they're going to have to cross the line and another way. And that's where Christians, but especially patriots, and it's hard, it ain't easy, but it's going to have to be like,
right.
Like, I want to say something to you, but you want to be like, I told you so, or whatever. No, you got to go, and go turn this I into a hand and say, all right, I got you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, that's good.
And here's what is going on. All lawful, all ethical, all moral, and it only helps you. It doesn't hurt you.
Yeah. Wow, that's so powerful. Woo, what a way to end this segment. Oh my God. Oh, Derek, I can remember last year, I just really felt so strong in the spirit that the Lord was going to have you be a part of Trump's team somehow. Have you gotten any confirmation yet?
No, I hadn't. No, and I mean, I'm probably not the best pick anyway, as far as from a policy and a political realm, from that manner. I have talked to people, with military and whatnot of maybe going in on a contract, not a defense, because he said he's going to end lobbyists and defense contracts, but I think he meant from the standpoint of the warmongering part, not necessarily a civilian in a military role like some of my friends are, and I've talked to them about that, because I think that's probably where my heart would be more of. But
to teach them, I mean, how many military don't even know?
Oh, we got to get that. No, our military don't do that at all. Our military doesn't teach laws and orders. It doesn't teach how they pair. It don't even teach our declaration. It don't teach any of our like that. And we need to put a heavier emphasis on not cram studying your regulations before promotion. No, you need to study this on a daily basis.
Yes.
Right. Because that's what guys do. Let's just be honest. I mean, I've been in the military. Alan's been in. I mean, we know guys do this. They cram study. They know they're going in for a promotion. They cram study. Oh, what are they going to ask me? And then if you know that if you know it like I know it, then you won't have to cram study. Right. It'll just, and that's what and that comes too, though, with also recruiting smarter individuals. And President Trump has said this: we gotta recruit smarter individuals to government, but also military, because people gotta want it here too. Mm-hmm. It can't just be here. And we do have the military is great. It's got great benefits, everything. But we can't make that the basis. And that's what President Eisenhower, 5-star general, talked about January 17, 1961, the military industrial complex. He didn't like where we were going because of money, right? Money was recruiting people into the military. Well, then all of a sudden their motives are wrong. Now, they can still be a good person. They can still be a good person with a good heart and good intentions in another manner, but some weren't. And a lot of people that we got in were all monetary based, and that's when it becomes dangerous. So little things like that. We got to recruit better. But yeah, I think that, now it's out of my control. Only God knows. And if I was presented with some kind of opportunity, I know that my walk and my talk is all about what God wants me to do, and whatever the next step is in life, I'll take it. And I'll know, because I'm walking and talking with Him. I'll know that discernment. But if I did, I would take it. But if not, then God put me where He put me for a reason, and I'll still do what He wants me to do, whatever that is. I'm not going to stop knowing the laws and orders. I'm not going to stop knowing what I know. So I'll do whatever capacity that He wants me to be, and I'll do it. So.
Yeah, amen to that. And I do see you in that capacity. I could see Him hiring you for that, to educate those that are going in to the military. This is what you're going in for. There's a bigger picture here. It's not just this one aspect.
That's right.
It's so much bigger. And I can see you doing that, because I'm telling you, wow, God has truly anointed you.
Well, if you go in the military the right way, you're supposed to come out feeling like you're a part of something bigger than you, and all walks of life, all different kinds of people, all different kinds of religions, all different kinds of mindsets, and everybody comes together cohesively. That's why the military don't look at things the way certain civilians do. And it don't mean that individuals don't have those feelings or opinions, etc. But the military is supposed to be bigger than you. It's a team. It's supposed to be that. All right. The leadership is supposed to be impeccable always, and it hasn't been. But still, when you come back out, you're supposed to, it's supposed to give you that feeling. Like me, I don't think about stuff I don't have. I appreciate what I do have, right? It flips your attitude of what you have. I had sergeants and people, and I hate bringing this up, but I always tell this, but I knew people who they talked about their wife like she looked like Vanna White, and then you're looking in your manner like going, oh, and then they walk in the room and you're like, that's Vanna, like that don't look like Vanna. Well, I say that, and I don't mean that in a bad way, and a lot of people might take that the wrong way, but what I say is this, is that every person I knew, like, they appreciated what they had in their life. Didn't matter about looks, didn't matter about what kind of car it was, what kind of truck it was, what kind of house you lived in, none of that stuff. Like when the heart is correct and you're serving the correct way, all that stuff goes aside. Plus, you're around each other 24/7. You know everybody's business. You know everything, right? You know everything, right? And so all this other stuff gets put aside. And then you see men talk about their wives, and you may look at them in your manner going, she's not that pretty to me, but then they look at them like they hone the moon, stars, and everything, and they're not looking everywhere else. They look at that person, and they look at them like, man, like way up here. And that inspires people. It should inspire you to go, wow, like they found substance and quality. They're not looking at stuff they don't have. They're not looking around at the world. They're not looking around at everything else. We appreciate what we have versus anything else. Now that's not everybody. And they're susceptible in military to have things, and there's been crimes committed. There's been, yes, but I'm talking about just the majority, that a lot of military do come out. And that's why a lot of military do that. They do, hey, they want to be in the middle of nowhere, leave me alone. Got my wife, my husband, my kids, whatever it is. Right. If they're not married, whatever, but they want to be little piece of land, little house. It ain't gotta be right. And so it's like that, it's a mentality, right? And then it's also supposed to instill that in you, that this is bigger than me, it's bigger than my resume and all the awards or whatever else you could have, medals, etc. It's bigger than that. And that's why it's important that people do realize when they're going in the service, like this is what you're about to embark in. And you should feel that, but you don't need to be going in there all because, I'm getting college or this, that. No, that's a benefit. That's a privilege, right? It's a privilege. It shouldn't be your focus. It should be your privilege. And yes, hey, take full advantage of your privilege, but it's all about the mindset about how you get it and how you earn it and how you attain it. And yeah, we gotta put that emphasis into place.
Amen to that. Wow. Well, I want to thank you for these 3 hours of just spending with you. Like I said at the beginning, I could spend days and weeks just, grasping the wisdom that God has given you to put on paper on this book. And I do, if people are listening right now and you are listening and you don't have this book, you've got to get it. Where can they get this book? Because this, man, when I opened this up, I was just like, whoa, I didn't know that, and it was just so enlightening, and it brings you to where we are right now, and like, okay, I see all this, I'm not woke, I'm awakened. Hallelujah. Okay. So where can they get the book?
Well, if you want it signed by me, which a lot of people want it signed, personal, then you go to rattletrap1776.com. So rattletrap1776.com. Click on Get More Gear and it sends you over to my Shopify. If you want it on Kindle, or if you're international listening, then you have to go to Amazon. It is currently a #1 bestseller on Amazon. It's been that way for a year, but it's been great. But I'm working on part two, so I went ahead and put it out December 2023. That way people could catch up. And so there's going to be a part two, obviously from December 2023 all the way up to January. So, a lot of people wanted it for Christmas part two, but I'm like, well, we can't do that because we're not through January yet, which are the key components of the next phase. So, part two will be up to date. But yeah, I mean, it's all the military laws and orders and how they pair with federal executives and how it pairs in and really covers what you saw from 2015,
Mhm.
the covert operations, because there's multiple different operations that's been used throughout this. So, and now the second portion is going to cover like the special operation part of it. I left some of the special operations part out in the beginning because it's trying to get people caught up to where we were and what they witnessed. And now the finale part will bring in more of the strategic special operations, more of the fine tuning, as we call it, more of the really, it's not nitpicking in a bad way, but getting down to the brass knuckles, as the saying is, bringing
Right.
in that portion. And then what they do and how they decide to unveil January, moving into the next what I call phase, because this is still like a parameter, as I call it. It's not going to end here, but if you will, for just visual sake, put a fence around it right now. That is a strategic operation. The 45, the dash, and the 47.
Mm.
So it just depends on when they decide to unveil a lot more. But I wanted to cover really what they do because January 6th is a part of our constitutional process of certifying the president. That was not a special day, January the 6th, 2021, because of Biden and President Trump back then. So people need to see that. And so whatever they decide to do on this January the 6th, well, first, the delegates being turned in December, what they do with that. And then the executive order 13848 with the national emergency, because it's been continued to September 2025, that means it's going to have a termination of some point, either by a president termination or a joint resolution, president and Congress. So, President Trump's the first president to terminate an executive order or a national emergency from years past. So he's going to terminate his executive orders. So, it's getting to the most visual out of that because I don't want a part three and a part four and part five.
Yeah,
I don't
right,
want to
right,
do any of
right.
that. The biggest components are going to be what happens this January to put the book stamp on the part two, and then I'll track President Trump's 47th, and we'll do a book on that later. But still,
I'm looking forward to it.
yeah.
Well, we'll have to have you on and maybe at the end of January, see what's cooking by then.
Oh
Wow.
yeah.
Oh man, it's a lot. It's a lot. Wow.
Nothing
Exciting
to fear.
time.
It's all planned. Nothing to fear, ladies and gentlemen. It's all planned. It's all part of a plan. It's a special operation plan.
Amen. Fear not, for the Lord goes before you. He makes the crooked places straight. Hallelujah. So that's exactly what he's doing right now. So, ooh, exciting. Well, thank you, Derek. I appreciate it. And I'll have all your links below so that people can just go ahead and click on it and watch all the videos that you do and the intel updates and all this stuff. So, yeah. Looking forward to it.
Well, yeah, it's
All
good to
right.
be here. It's good to be here. So,
Oh, thank you so much. Bless you. Bless you, everyone. Thank you for joining us on Upfront in the Prophetic.